Now we can start.
We'll hear Spanish interpretation.
Thank you. The following message will repeat in Spanish. We are offering live interpretation into Spanish via our Zoom platform. To access our Spanish channel, press the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen where you will see a globe icon. Choose Spanish. If you're joining via Zoom's smartphone app, select your language by clicking More, or the three dots at the bottom of your screen. Select Language Interpretation and choose Spanish. Bienvenidos. Estamos ofreciendo interpretación en español en vivo y en directo durante nuestra sesión en la plataforma Zoom. Para tener acceso a interpretación, oprima el icono del globo terráqueo al pie de su pantalla y seleccione Spanish o español según su formato. Si está uniéndose a Zoom en su teléfono inteligente, seleccione los tres puntitos al pie de su pantalla. Elija Interpretación de idiomas y presione Spanish o español según su formato. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you. Our land acknowledgement. The city of South Lake Tahoe acknowledges the lands we occupy today are the lands and home of the Washishu, the people from here known today as the Washoe tribe of Nevada and California, a sovereign nation. Since the beginning of time and for thousands of years before the arrival of any other people, the Washoe lived here and cared for this place with values and intention that we can all learn from. On behalf of the City Council, I would like to acknowledge, thank, and honor the indigenous Washoe tribal communities that are the past, present, and future stewards of the Lake Tahoe Basin. I'll call the meeting to order, and if everybody could please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Blankenship, can you please do a roll call?
Of course. Councilmember Roberts?
Present.
Councilmember Jenkins? Here. Councilmember Robbins?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Bass?
Here.
Mayor Wallace?
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Ms. Stroud, do we have a closed session report?
No, Madam Mayor, we do not have any closed session tonight, and there's nothing to report.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to public communications. This is the public's opportunity to speak on any topic not listed on this agenda. Comments shall be limited to 4 minutes. In accordance with the Brown Act, the City Council cannot deliberate or vote on any matter raised under public communications, but may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak? Mr. Smith. And then Mr. Roberson, you can just come up right after him. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Duggan Smith. I'm a city resident. The City Council has used misleading and incorrect information to make a decision, and I believe you've gone down the wrong path. At the last meeting, you used this table from an old staff report to negotiate a new vacation rental compromise, to use a buffer to set a desired number of permits in the city. You landed at a 150-foot buffer to achieve 1,288 permits. This was a compromise between the three members of council that like 1,400 permits, like the old ordinance, and the two that are considered want less. This table presents as a very accurate number that should likely be achieved, and in your discussions last meeting, you acted accordingly, seem to believe that is the case. This is not the case. This is very misleading. It's completely false. It doesn't hold up in the real world. The fact is, when you populate town according to a buffer, it's a very unpredictable and complex and random process. It depends not only on the buffer that you choose, but also on the lot dimensions, the intended use of each parcel, and also the order in which permits are issued. If you rolled this program out 100 times, you would get 100 different results with maybe as few as 200 or 300 permits, maybe as many as 11 or 1,200 permits. The reason for that, I can explain to you in a bit of a simplified picture here. This is populating the town with vacation rentals 150 feet apart. This gives a density of 8%, which stacks up pretty well with the 1288 across the city supply. This is the theoretical maximum. It's your 100th percentile. It's hitting the lottery. It's just not going to happen. Okay. Another scenario here is if the buffers don't overlap. Now all of a sudden there's no qualifying lot in between, and the vacation rentals at 300 feet apart, density drops to 3%, and that would be 400 permits citywide. That's not even worst case, because if there's qualifying lots in between that don't want to be vacation rentals, Forest Service or whatnot, then the distance is even bigger, density is dropping further, and you've got even less permits. So it's when you populate the town, it's going to be a random mix of this. Sometimes you'll have closer together, sometimes further apart. There's no way to predict what the final outcome is going to be. The best you could do is program a computer to do thousands of trials and come up with a probability distribution that would give you a median value, but it's still going to have a variance as well. I think 150 feet in the city is probably going to be around 600 or 700 permits as a median, but it could vary a couple of hundred permits higher or lower. There's just no telling. For this reason, populating, if you want a stable and predictable vacation rental ordinance, using a buffer as the controlling factor just isn't going to work. Buffers also have terrible secondary effects, particularly if you're not grandfathering in all the existing permits. You're going to have vacation rentals pushed into local neighbourhoods. You're going to have residents displaced. You're going to have a fall in TOT. You're going to have legal liability, perhaps. The real solution is just a simple cap and then other measures to control any issues that might come up. You made this decision in good faith, but on faulty information. And so I think you really need to go back and consider this again and keep the vacation rental ordinance simple, fair, predictable, and in the best interests of everyone. I would be happy to discuss this with any of you at any time. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Roberson?
There's a handout there for everyone as well as the slides.
Oh, excellent. Thank you, Susan. I'm going to talk about two things about VHRs. You're probably surprised I'm talking about VHRs. One is going to be the buffer, and the second one is enforcement. As it refers to the buffer, in 2018, we had 1,400 permits available. We never quite reached it, but that represented a little over 9.5% of the total housing that was available. Note that unoccupied homes were 31.6% of all homes at that time. Now, we still have that issue. How can we use those homes better for housing and even for VHRs? If you narrow down into the Keys, there were about 150 single-family homes as vacation rentals. And as you look at the yellow, that represents the vacation rental permits. They were pretty spread out, pretty random in there, but there were some pockets where there's a few of them right next to each other. But that represented a little more than 10% of the housing inside of Tahoe Keys. Tahoe Keys is perfect for vacation rentals. That 150-foot buffer that Duggan was just speaking about, if you pick one random home in Tahoe Keys, it's going to take out 35 other properties not being able to get a permit. Take that a little further. Take out 11 random homes. 226 permits would be omitted from the available pool. So there's no way we're going to get to 1288 in the city. And even in Tahoe Keys, which is ideal for vacation rentals with a lot of second homes, it's going to be less than 5%. That's true in these other neighborhoods as well. One permit can take out 26 to 30 homes in any of those three neighborhoods. So the bottom line here is that the buffer is going to result in 500 to 600. I believe Duggan, who's a mathematician, closer to 700. And it's really not going to achieve what we thought we were getting to 2 weeks ago. So as Duggan said, good effort, but that 1288 number just isn't true. My recommendation is to eliminate further consideration of any buffer and pick a number like 1,200, which is less than we had, and if we prove the program is working, then issue more permits as appropriate. If it's not, don't. Now let's switch over to enforcement because that's critical. But I'm not going to lecture on how to enforce, but that the city has done it before. Hats off to the police department, to the city staff. In 2017, they were approved to hire 6 enforcement officers and fully staff a VHR department, which they did. By the end of 2018, by August 2018, they had 6 enforcement officers. They had purchased unique services, people on the phone. They had purchased systems. They had purchased in-field equipment. And they were recording every single complaint that came in. Those complaints were recorded and up on the city website 24 hours later, 72 hours later if it was a weekend. But we were doing everything, and the police were supporting this. In 2019, we had 222 complaints, of which 26% resulted in a citation. These are all recorded. You can see them. I think most of them are still online. They've stopped recording them now. 2020, the same thing. 2020 was weird. 4 months of lockdown. So there was nobody in the homes. The only complaints coming in were that there was anyone in a home. People thinking they were illegal. But we had the most visitors in 8 months that we have ever seen, resulting in a total of 280 complaints that year. 16% were issued citations. So the city staff, the police department have proven that they can do this. Whenever someone says they haven't, please refer them to this. Please give them a chance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Oberson. Mr. Loberg? Then you, Mr. Mosher.
Good evening. I'm a little confused because I looked on the website, the link, and it said still had at 3:25 p.m., 3 minutes per item on the consent agenda. And then I look at 5:16 and it changed to 6 minutes total. So which are we going by? I'm confused. I understand, I imagine that's why you have consultants, because the staff can't get the shit together. The first speaker is not from around here, so I can imagine is not aware, but that's a racist term, grandfathering. Just look it up. You'll be embarrassed that you used it. When I was here at a previous meeting, I made a comment about putting a fire station on the possibility of putting it in a parking lot. And Robbins over here shot it down saying, the code, you got to have a certain number of spaces. Well, he was the same one at the previous meeting advocating for his so-called friends to not have to abide by the parking restrictions because they had small businesses. It's ridiculous. And the fire station, the Rayleigh's parking lot, they put in the aisle 1 gas station, they put in the transit center, even charging, electric vehicle charging stations. I find there's ways to make things happen. The other is the old Shell station. Unfortunately, that's sold, and it's going to be a coffee shop, but that would have been an ideal location. You could get a $1 a year, 99-year lease at the school grounds, and that could dovetail with the fire program that they have at the college, or even surplus land at the airport. But in point of fact, on 1190 Emerald Bay Road, there's an acre for sale for only $650,000, not $1 million. And I'm sure that's ample property with 13,000 square feet baseline, 30% coverage, or you could purchase up to 17% coverage to have 30,576 square feet. It's ridiculous to spend that kind of money. In real estate, it's location, location, location. And when you telegraph that you want to be right next door to where you are and the bank owns the land, guess what? You're going to pay a premium for that land. Even across the street, where the Barton used to have the quick care and then the hospice. And they're just going to make that land a collection basin or something. That would have been an easy place to move the fire station without having to probably spend $1 million for property. That's ridiculous. There's all kinds of options. You just look at one thing, the fire station department says, we want this. Oh, okay. You just rubber stamp it. It's ridiculous. But there's plenty of options. And the notion that I can come up here and make a comment and then someone from the council can comment and there's no chance for rebuttal is patently unfair. Especially when they make asinine comments like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Loberg. Mr. Mosier?
Ed Moser, South Lake Tahoe. Yeah, I'm going to comment, Mr. Wallace, on South Tahoe Now here, just on Sunday. A letter to the editor here, VHR decision by City Council was not simple, consistent, predictable, or fair. Just like to make a couple of points here. It says, and quote, "The approximately 70 closed down local businesses are proof enough that time is of the essence. July 3rd is far too late to begin only starting to process VHR permits." Many businesses closed down before Measure T, quite a few. You know, we've got some that have been closed down, and the whole, forget the whole, all those businesses closed down there. You know, Ms. Wallace, you and Brooke Lane were put on the Economic Recovery Subcommittee during the pandemic there. And, you know, let things go and get out of hand. People come up here, wasn't enforced. Mask use wasn't enforced. Businesses, motels were open and operating. Lots were full or half full. Got a lot of pictures to prove that. People were coming to town. A lot of people got sick. We lost a lot of employees as a result of that, of the failure to enforce. You know, Raley's had people dropping like flies down there and people that never returned to work and were very sick. So we lost a lot of good people here and some that got sick and didn't come back. So, you know, it wasn't just Measure T. Things were going downhill, you know, long before that. Also then, next is about need to get those people back to work, include plumbers, electricians, carpenters, house cleaners, laundry workers, reservationists, grocery clerks, cooks, waiters, waitresses, bartenders, baristas, gardeners, painters, and many more. Well, you know, we gave, where are we here? Okay. Contractors routinely rip off second and VHR owners. You know, I've hired a few, you know, on behalf of people that just caretake their house or watch it for them, but over the years of what I've watched and spoken with quite a few people and watched and witnessed and personally dealt with, you know, that's a problem here, and a lot of second homeowners, VHR owners can attest to that. You know, they say, hey, well, you know, they got $1 million house, $2 million house, or they're the only ones in town with money, so they take advantage of it. And I mean, absolute rip-offs. So, you know, you need to get your house in order there between, you know, all the professional people and contractors and people that do work here on all levels, you know, more than half of the people that are listed there by Mr. Wallace. Third is that measure was ruled to be unconstitutional due to one inseverable main part. It passed by about 50 votes. Speaking about Measure T, it passed by 58 votes. However, having Measure N defeated with a 70% no vote is a strong indication of the current sentiment towards these job-killing measures. We voters woke up. It won by 58 votes, and we're outspent by realtors by $500,000 to $2,000. Like I said, I told them if they were going to do it, at least do a couple of mailings, $15,000, and probably would have won by considerably more. Measure N was not of the same intent as Measure T, so you really can't compare. It's not even close to apples and oranges, or not even fruits. Measure N was ill-advised. I voted against it and told them about it, that, you know, their heart and minds were in the right place, but it was ill-advised. Just like, you know, permitting VHRs, both are unenforceable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mosier. Please come forward. Sorry, back with the hat. Then you, Mr. Exline, and then the young lady in the back corner.
Can I give these to the clerk to
Yes,
hand out?
please.
Thank you. City Council members, I've been watching the debate on the new VHR ordinance over the last two City Council meetings, and today I'd like to focus on what I believe is the most critical issue regarding the new ordinance, and that is the density requirements. I was encouraged to see the density requirements added to the ordinance in the last meeting. allowing certain neighborhoods, particularly those near the lake, Heavenly, and attractions to be disproportionately impacted by VHRs while others remain largely untouched is not fair. To illustrate this imbalance, I've distributed a package showing how VHRs are clustered in certain areas. On the first 2 pages, you'll see Gardner Mountain and Sierra Tract, for example, generally just have 1 to 2 VHRs per city block. On page 3, in contrast, areas like the Keys have clusters of 5 or more VHRs in close proximity. Page 4, Heavenly Valley neighborhood, my neighborhood. On the map of the red X marks my house. Within 300 feet of my house, there were over 12 VHRs. If we take the new requirements of occupancy, that equals 120 people and as many as 30 vehicles. That is quite a bit. And on big weekends like 4th of July, those are all full. At one point, more than 50% of the homes on my street were VHRs. This is not an isolated case, as you can see on the map. This kind of saturation erodes the character of our streets and our neighborhood. I keep hearing enforcement is the key, but when you have this kind of density, enforcement becomes more complicated, from parking to noise to trash. When an officer shows up, it's much harder to try to figure out who and who is not following the rules. Despite the claims to the contrary, VHRs do not make great neighbors. No matter how respectful the guests may be, they are not part of the community. With the return to residential neighborhood, the improvement in my quality of life has been dramatic. Being surrounded by long-term residents, people who care about our neighborhood and support one another have restored community spirit that was lost during the VHR heavy years. We must address the issue of density. Without it, we risk returning to hotel neighborhoods, increased frustration among permanent residents. The only way to preserve residential neighborhoods is for residents to have a meaningful cap on density. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you. Mr. Exling?
Good evening, council members. Nick Exline for the record. Pleasure to be with you this evening. I'm not here to talk about VHR, so I'm going to give everybody a reprieve for a few minutes. As many may know, I was fortunate enough to partner with the Margaritaville company as it began its redevelopment effort from the kind of old and dusty Lake Tahoe Resort, formerly the Embassy Suites, to the Margaritaville. It's been a fantastic project, one of the great kind of redevelopment efforts that's taking place in our downtown core, where is fundamentally where we want tourists to be. For many different reasons, from a lot of the comments you've heard today, but also if you want to get transit to work and many of these other things, having that density and people localize and centralize in a space like that is pivotal. Unfortunately, unlike Field of Dreams, they built it and people did not come. And so the individuals that developed the Margaritaville own properties all over the United States. And one of the things they had looked at in previous developments in which there was a lot of vacancy and they looked to generate additional excitement was to look to include a timeshare/condo hotel option within the existing structure. Myself or other members of my staff had reached out to the council. I'd previously spoken about this with Mr. Urban and Mr. Hitchcock in terms of bringing this idea forward. The issue at play is that timeshares are only allowed per city code in new construction. And so that is only a city requirement that has nothing to do with TRPA. And so what we would like to do is partner with the city on behalf of Margaritaville to look to change that code in the tourist core area plan in a manner that befit everyone's kind of requirements and suggestions to make sure it adhered to the intent of what we're looking to do. And that is fundamentally to reinvigorate and excite and allow for different tourist options in the downtown core. And so, we really believe in public-private partnerships. We understand how tax city staff staff is with everything going on, the comments, changes and so forth, and we really, identify with that. And so we want to partner with staff. Staff has been great. I must express that at the onset, but we want to partner with staff to bring this forward. It's an incredibly important opportunity. This is an individual to, Miss Wallace, that has invested significant funds in our downtown community, and they just need a little support from our community to help to make sure that they're able to make that investment work. And the demonstration of the successful investment by a huge holder like Margaritaville just represents the others that look to invest in our community, that not only can you make it work in South Lake Tahoe, but when you get to a challenge, the city is willing to work with you to make it work and bring about these changes that our community wants to see. And so I'd really like the opportunity to follow up with council members and city staff to see how we could partner with this and move this forward. Really encouraged by Councilmember Jenkins responded to our email and received some of his comments initially, very positive. And so really want to in any manner deemed acceptable by council and staff, again, work with city to bring about this change and really allow for Margaritaville to succeed and be a success story for how the city partnered with a private interest in the manner that allowed for tourists in our downtown core, that allowed that core to flourish, allowed transportation to ignite, and bring about a better South Lake Tahoe. So thank you so much for your time, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Mr. Exline. Please come forward.
Good evening, Mayor Wallace, Mayor Pro Temp Bass, City Council members, and city staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Heidi Munneke, and I'm here to represent the South Tahoe Association of Realtors and their input on the proposed amendments to the vacation home rental ordinance. We appreciate the city's efforts to balance neighborhood livability with the rights of responsible property owners and the economic viability tourism brings to our community. First, we urge the council to consider reinstating the VHR ordinance, which was in place before Measure T's passing, as a starting point. The core issue hasn't been a lack of rules, it's been inconsistent enforcement. Before adding new restrictions, let's focus on effectively enforcing the rules we already have in place, especially during peak hours when issues arrive with visitors. If council is intent on proceeding with making changes to the previous ordinance prior to reinstating VHRs, we make the following recommendations. We believe requiring in-person check-ins is outdated and impractical. Many operators already use secure remote guest verification tools that are more effective and more efficient at preventing problems, and they thoroughly vet guests before bookings are even allowed. Also, we support mandatory noise monitoring and quick response systems to proactively address disturbances. A brief certification course for owners and managers is a good idea, and we also support staggered permit releases to avoid overwhelming the staff and stakeholders. Regarding waste management, we believe bear boxes should be required, even if South Tahoe Refuse is phasing out new installations. They're vital for visitors unfamiliar with our trash and recycling processes and schedules, whom don't understand our wildlife concerns. We also asked the council to keep condos and townhomes eligible for VHR permits. Many were originally built for vacation use, and HOAs have the flexibility and power to establish stricter rules and disallow them altogether if they wish. We oppose a buffer radius, as it is inequitable and hasn't proven effective elsewhere. In the county, for example, we're seeing very few new permits being issued. It's become an unfair scenario for those who have had permits prior to the buffer being passed and those without permits who are on the wait list. People on the wait list have very little hope that they'll luck out and get a permit. Finally, we strongly support requiring defensible space requirements before issuing a VHR permit. It's a smart move for the fire safety of the community resilience. In closing, we ask the council to adopt practical, enforceable policies that rely on accountability, education, modern tools, and data. With thoughtful implementation, we can support both community quality of life and a strong local economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Munneke. Is there anyone else in the room? Ms. Gresh?
Good evening, council and city staff. My name is Lauren Gresh with R&R Vacation Rentals. I'm here to share some concerns about the proposed rule requiring in-person check-ins for VHR guests. On paper, this rule might sound helpful, but in real life, it's hard to manage, not based on real data, and could do more harm than good. Most VHR guests don't cause problems. The real work happens at the time of booking. When we screen guests, we check ages, We make sure they understand the rules. That's when we set the tone, not when someone shows up late at night, sometimes at 2 a.m. Requiring local contacts to meet every guest in person or by video just isn't practical, especially 24/7. Requiring a local contact to be available 24/7 to respond to violation calls, if they happen, makes sense and will help to weed out bad actors. Also, not all guests are tech savvy. Requiring video check-ins could push good, respectful visitors away. There are better tools. Age minimums of 25 and over for reservation holders, strong guest agreements, noise monitors, driveway cameras, and clear occupancy limits. These tools work. They help us prevent issues before they happen. Lastly, it's simply not true that enforcement doesn't work. City and county data and real-world experience prove it has. Saying otherwise spreads misinformation and shouldn't be the reason we create new rules like check-in mandates or property buffers. Thanks for listening and for your effort in working towards smarter, fairer policies. Have a good night.
Ms. Gresh. Is there anyone else in the room? Mr. Wallace?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. My name is Dwayne Wallace. I'm the CEO of the South Tahoe Chamber of Commerce. I have a couple good things to talk about first. One of them is the fire forum I had mentioned went really well with Jim Drennan, and getting it out there on the net is really important, especially when it comes, we think, to if there was something that happened and people had to shelter in place, they need to know where to go. And I thought it was very well done. The other is our chamber is going to be announcing soon that we're going to restart the Wedding Association. And the reason why is, I'll just give you a couple of quick numbers. 1990 and before, our city had generated 10,000 weddings a year. In 2024, I think, which was the last, maybe it was 2024 was the last numbers. Janelle Horn was at our meeting last night, our recorder clerk. It was less than 500. And each of those weddings generates thousands and thousands of dollars of good guests who maybe have stopped coming because they didn't have VHRs to stay in. Usually the bride and groom stay in a VHR and the rest of the guests stay in motels. That's had been generally the way it's gone. That's why the Lodging Association has been in favor of returning VHRs, because it's part of the menu mix, as we call it, in the restaurant business. So now to the VHR ordinance. I personally know that there's just been a lot of work put in. I've put in work, others have put in hours and hours, and it's been very confusing. And so that's why our chamber pushed for going back to the VHR ordinance 1114. And the reason was that had been tested. It had been tried, and some of the bugs were being worked out. And we felt like that it could be tested some more, it could be immediately implemented, and we could perhaps save our summer. Now, our family is kind of fond of movie quotes, and it was nobody's fault. It was just mass confusion when we started looking at these, the 1288 is it, numbers. And I think in Animal House, when they wrecked that guy's parents' Lincoln, they said, hey, you screwed up, you trusted us. Well, we screwed up, we trusted the numbers. Nobody had had a chance to look at them yet. Nobody's fault. I think the public could have been a little more clear a little earlier, but okay. That was then, this is now. So it's obvious, based on just what little numbers I ran, and that was before I wrote the letter that Mr. Moser liked so well. I just knew something was wrong. My math isn't as good as it used to be. In fact, it never was, because when I was in math class, they just started miniskirts, and that was really hard. But the bottom line is something needs to be done. It can't be done with the 1288 because distancing doesn't work. So what do? Well, there's two ways it could go that I recommend. One is to hold a special meeting, come back and fix fix it. Now that we have better information, we can make a better decision. The other is to put two motions on the table when you go to decide on this, one with the distancing and one without, and let the council decide. I'm kind of leaning, I still think 1114 would be better, but making a decision between those two things makes more sense. The other quote I've always liked was in Austin Powers when he said, $1 million. Well, 3 months would save us $1 million if we do it now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak on Mr. Fry?
Dear Honorable Mayor and Council members, my name is Caleb Fry. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. Some insist VHR enforcement has never worked and that extreme measures are now necessary. That's simply not true. City data and firsthand experiences show otherwise. Response times with 6 dedicated officers averaged 15 minutes and citations were steadily declining. You have an extensive list of quality amendments that make sense. Occupancy rules that support family-friendly tourism, guest messaging and rental agreement standards, noise monitoring, parking, and trash cameras, strengthened 24/7 local contact requirements, stricter consequences for violations, bear box requirements, and a potential minimum age of 25 to rent. These are practical, proven solutions that will enhance 1114 and make this one of the strongest VHR programs in the region and country. Combined with Mr. Irvin's dedication to enforcement, this is a winning formula. It makes sense, and it will bring tremendous and needed support to our tourism community. Unfortunately, misleading information has derailed this effort, leading to some proposals that have severe unintended consequences. First, buffering. The 2017 report suggested a 150-foot buffer would yield 1,288 permits. That misled all of us. After closer analysis, estimates are closer to half that and highly unpredictable. This was not the intent of council and has severe economic consequences. It will skyrocket permit costs in effort to achieve cost recovery, undermine efforts to prioritize former permit holders by arbitrarily excluding many. It forces staff and managers to choose winners and losers, potentially increasing legal risk and deepening community resentment. Worse, it reduces permits in ideal areas like the Tahoe Keys and shifts them into other neighborhoods with more affordable housing and permanent residents. There's no data showing buffering works. It doesn't address bad actors or illegal rentals, and as you've said yourself, the only thing that does is enforcement. Please reject buffering and use a clear, simple cap instead. Second, 24-hour check-in. While well-intentioned, this approach is burdensome and unnecessary. Data shows most VHRs never receive complaints. Screening should happen at the time of booking, not when the first guest arrives, sometimes very late. Often that person isn't the booking guests, and counting guests isn't possible as they arrive in waves. In-person check-ins can add disruption to neighborhoods, and many guests can't manage video technology. More effective solutions include age minimums, clear rental terms, smart screening and compliance tools like cameras and noise monitors. And again, enforcing against the bad actors. Third, just some feedback on the commercial and recreational zones. These have always allowed VHRs before, during, and after Measure T. We support clarifying language to treat them like the tourist core and not subject them to caps, buffering, or multifamily restrictions. In closing, please don't let flawed data or false claims about enforcement derail the great work that the city has done and is doing. Reinstate Ordinance 1114 and strengthen it with thoughtful, enforceable amendments, whether with a new motion or by ending the moratorium and amending in parallel. With your leadership, this program can be more effective than ever, and restoring it is essential to the economic vitality of our tourism community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fry. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to speak on any item not listed on today's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to our Zoom platform.
Yeah, I do see that we have a couple hands raised. I did want to note for the record that we did receive, and I distributed to council, public comments from Kerrigan, Cooter, Wallace, Roberson, Miller, and Steve Y. And our first Zoom Participant is Don Gehrig.
Hi, thank you. Don Gehrig, I'm a resident up there. First wanted to thank everyone for the difficult tasks that we're obviously addressing on both sides. One of the concerns I would assume that everybody's looking at is how to avoid future litigations on regarding these issues. With that in mind, I think you obviously got to play devil's advocate on both sides to be able to look at it and figure out which is what makes sense. You know, the enforcement is definitely a sensitive issue, and I can understand people's skepticism. I would strongly recommend that everyone have an open mind regarding the enforcement to see if we can come up with some solutions to fix this. You know, past failures, if everybody looked at past failures, I think that not a lot would get fixed in life. And I think that there's a lot of really great South Lake Tahoe employees, and I know they've put a lot of effort into fixing some of these things. And I think we really got to give them a chance to see if we can make this all work. I also believe that, you know, the people that have permits previously, I think 100% of them, the ones that are in good standing, of course, should be offered a path to be obtaining a permit. This will definitely lower the likeliness of litigation from that side. And yes, I understand that this is in conflict with the proximity rule. I think there might be a few ways around that. I think one of the ways might be around it is, again, I'm using a word here, I apologize if I offend anybody. I mentioned earlier, having maybe a grandfather clause fee, meaning that if there's an overlapping of some of these properties, maybe they have to pay additional fees, maybe double, maybe triple the fee, I don't know. But I think you could justify these costs because of the additional monitoring of these specific areas that need to make sure that everybody is getting along and doing what they need to do. I also want to bring up a little bit of a fact. It seems, you know, I've lived around a lot of properties over the years, and you know, I think it's labeled as VHR properties are always bad and all the other neighbors are good, and that's just not the case. I mean, there's bad people on both sides, and I think that if we're going to be enforcing things, I think it's got to be for everybody across the board, not just VHR properties. And then possibility, I think there's only like 30 of the QVHRs. I'm one of them. I have followed these rules and guidelines, and now I've lost my permit 2 times in a row. If there's any way to be able to get priority to get those back instated for people, I think that would be helpful. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you. All right, next up we have Lisa Underwood. Lisa Underwood. Okay, Lisa.
Hi, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Okay, go
Can you hear
ahead.
me?
Yes, go.
Sorry. Lisa Underwood, Tahoe Keys Resort. Mayor Wallace and honorable council members, the reinstatement of VHRs to our local lodging mix is one of the most important economic boosts to affect South Lake Tahoe since Measure T banned them and permits were lost in 2021. For South Lake Tahoe, it is more impactful than the convention center, bigger than event-driven tourism like concert series and snow globe. It brings dollars into neighborhoods west of the tourist core. We appreciate your willingness to take the time to get this right. It is vitally important not only for the longevity of the industry, but the peace of our neighborhoods. As I have said before, the local VHR management industry is not the enemy. We, like you, want the economic benefit for all with the least adverse effect on our neighbors, because they are indeed our neighbors too. With the rollout of Ordinance 1144 and the fine structure imposed upon guests, we finally had the teeth that had been lacking for so many years. I can assure you, managers such as myself took this very seriously. We did not want the stigma of making the naughty list that was posted at the beginning of each week following the busy weekends. With the rollout of 1144, the city provided language and flyers that were included with every terms and conditions document received and signed by guests. We posted them in the homes as well. Most of us, especially the ones active in this room tonight, have always gone the extra mile to ensure not only guest compliance, but good stewardship. Educating on wildlife, trash, respecting the neighbors, making recommendations on what to do and what not to do in South Lake Tahoe. The bad actors were and are the anomaly, not the norm. What we don't want to do is get lost in the weeds, making stipulations that truly have no effect except to make the process harder. Things that work, some other industry folks have commented on those tonight. Unified code messaging and ads, including OTAs and in-terms documents, solid signage in the homes regarding fines, minimum age restrictions for renters, strict no-party policies with enforcement, cameras and noise monitors, and although my company has never used these before, many of our industry do with good results, responsible screenings before the stay. There are many tools available to ensure ID verification and retention, credit card matching, and electronic signature collection for documents and terms. Things that don't make a difference, in-person or face-to-face check-in. Our company actually was one of the last holdouts for in-person check-in. We did this up until COVID, where it became impractical. While we had very few behavior issues, it wasn't because they came to the office to get the codes or the keys and to sign. It was because we had screened and read them the riot act about parties, noise, after hours, hot tub usage, and more when they were making the reservation. We have discouraged hundreds of folks throughout the years from booking with us. We ask questions, we alert them. You break the rules, be evicted. It's that simple. It is much more effective when that conversation takes place at the time of booking than after 10 people show up to throw down. If it is done in advance, they still have time to book somewhere else, out of our town. As a company, we can do what we need to do, but I'd rather do what makes sense and not just busy work. Regulation for regulation's sake is a waste of everyone's time. Let's focus on the things we know will matter. Unified code messaging and ads, including OTAs and in-term documents, solid signage regarding fines, minimum age restriction for renters, strict no-party policy with enforcement, cameras and noise monitors, and responsible screening before the stay. Thank you. We appreciate you all.
Thank you. All right, next up we have Lorraine Jackson.
Hello, thank you for allowing time for people to speak. I previously have had a VHR permit for 20 years, and during that time, my occupancy limit under the previous ordinance was 8 people. Never had a complaint in all the time I owned my vacation rental, but the current discussion is talking about 2 per room. I have 3 bedrooms with 4 beds, twin beds upstairs. And the new proposed ordinance would reduce my occupancy to 6. And this means I'd have to turn people away. And I'm a little concerned about that because I think a 2 plus 2, 2 per bedroom plus 2, which is what it was before, is better. It is not the case that having 8 adults and people there was a problem in the 20 years I managed my vacation rental. The other thing I want to discuss is some practical questions that are coming up for me because of the moratorium. And so I'm considering not doing a VHR and just renting my house for the 30 days plus short term to someone. My question is, what happens if I'm offered a permit and I do want the permit later in the year? Should I buy the permit to secure my spot? Or should I decline the permit? If I accept the permit, this subjects me to all the possibility of fines, etc., I imagine. And if I decline, will I be at the top of the list for later or at the bottom? And I think these are some practical questions as people morph out of longer-term rentals into VHRs, or as people consider what to do, need to be addressed and answered. Lastly, I want to say, dreaming up super large permit fees and super big fines don't make this so stressful for small town owners who are doing their best and have the option of bowing out of the whole program. You know, I have the option of leaving my home vacant except for when I'm visiting and using it. That means, you know, there's not the tourists coming. And so I would think about that. I would think about how can this be something that's, you know, doable for people like myself. The thought of $3,000 and $5,000 fines is very overwhelming. And I am very well-meaning and I do my best with all the rules and have followed them. And I don't think it's wise to make this so onerous for people that it becomes unattractive to bring tourists to Lake Tahoe. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no additional hands raised at this time, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Blankenship. Okay, moving on to city commission reports. Are there any city commissioners in the audience that would like to make a report? Is there anybody on Zoom, Ms. Blankenship?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Tonight we have 2 consent agendas. Items 1 through 9 are city council consent. Item 10 is the successor agency consent. We'll do those separately. Is there any thing from council, any recusals?
No, but I have a question.
Microphone.
I don't think I need to pull it. I just have a question for 9.
Okay.
I don't think I need a whole presentation or anything. I just want to ask a couple questions.
Should
we can pull
we?
it if we need to, but I have a couple of questions, that's all.
Okay, let's pull number 9.
It's not
and
a whole thing, I just.
Okay.
Right.
So we're pulling number 9. Anything else, council?
Number 2, item number 2, Mayor.
Item number 2. Okay. Anything else? Okay, we'll take public comment on items 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak on these items? Seeing none, we'll go to Zoom. Oh, Mr. Gregorich, right under the wire.
Good evening, council and city staff. I'll make a brief comment on number 6.
Thank you.
On the agreement with the county on the multi-generational recreation center. Speaking as a member of the senior community, Section 2.3 states the county, at its option, may elect to continue providing older adult services and programs at the senior center in addition to those provided at the multi-generational center. We appreciate that the city will be including senior programming as part of the new rec center. We encourage the county to continue to provide services at the existing senior center. We expect the county to continue to provide services at the existing senior center, and we expect it at a scale that is on par with what's provided in Placerville and on par what's provided by the other counties in the region. So just wanted to put that out there, and thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gregorich. Is there any other member of the public that would like to speak on the items listed?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Leberg.
On the items listed. Okay, number 5 and number 7.
Okay.
Okay, number 5, that $500,000, that could pay to move the paving equipment more than a dozen times, since it's so supposedly so expensive. I don't know who negotiates these damn contracts, but they should not be doing a hell of a lot better job than charging 40 grand or whatever to move equipment. That's just asinine. Poor negotiation skills at best. Maybe you should get a consultant to do the negotiations instead. And on number 7, the 2024 road rehabilitation project. There was a road project series established in 2018, 2019, and my roads in my neighborhood were on that. And for some reason, they were not done. It's inexcusable. Where did the money go? Where was it spent? And there's also provision for taking money from the utility to finish any cuts that they've made in there. I testified the other day at the water company that not to spend that money to the city and do it themselves because that work doesn't get done. I don't know where the hell you put the money but it doesn't get done. I can show you a bunch of cuts that have not been done, not been touched in probably 20 years or more. So I don't know what the hell you're squaring the money off to, but it needs to be done as the agreement is. But I've never gotten an answer why all these roads that apparently a lot of staff time and community time was spent developing plans to do these roads. And my road was the second worst out of a rating from 1 to 100, 1 being the worst. Mine was rated, I think, 23, and it was the second worst of the roads that were supposed to be done in 2024. That's removed and replaced with 3 inches of asphalt. It was not done. Okay, I've been coming to these meetings. I finally got patching. I don't know what the heck patching is supposed to do, but I got patching on it when it's supposed to have been removed and replaced. And why I had to show them the area that needed to be done when it's already been established that that area is bad, that needs to be fixed. I don't understand. You know, you would just spend money and spend time and have staff do all these plans, have the public involved, and just throw it in the trash? You know, is this some kind of conservancy project? Are you all conservancy's bitches? I don't get it.
Thank you, Mr. Lober. Is there anyone else in the room that would like to make comment on consent items? Seeing none, we'll go to Zoom.
There's no hands raised at this time, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We have items 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
I'll put forward a motion that we move those items.
Thank you.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
That motion unanimously carries.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 2. Mr. Jenkins, do you need a staff report or just do you have questions?
I have comments. I have communicated the questions, the comments that and the questions with the city manager and with the director. I have to say in advance, as I have done in the past, that I have the highest regard for the Public Works Department and its leadership and the city manager. But I have some questions about this contract, this traffic controlling toolbox. The staff report talks about what it'll do, and for the public, it'll address issues like speeding in residential areas, cut-through traffic in residential, excessive perceived speed, all of which are police department issues in my humble opinion. Conflicts between scooter and pedestrians, we've had conversations about that, and there was supposed to be some people looking at that issue, including the TRPA person. Traffic control devices, in state law, it specifies what the conditions are for undulation devices. Those are speed bumps or signals, how you can put them in, when you can put them in, what the warrants need to be, stop signs, crosswalks. So I'm a little concerned, I'm probably a little more concerned, with a toolbox of things that I think we already have resources to do. We have staff, quality staff to do it. I'm also concerned with spending $100,000 that I respectfully say I would like to see used on maintaining city streets rather than spending on a toolbox that just is a toolbox. So that's, and I've shared that with the city manager, I've shared that with Mr. Najad, and I know there may be some reasons for what they want to do, and he'll be happy to talk about them if you wish him to do so.
Mr. Najad, would you like to respond?
Yes. We do get a lot of requests for traffic calming throughout the city. We have been responding to those on a case-by-case basis. It takes a lot of staff time to be able to do that. We do not have the resources to be able to address all of the complaints and requests that we get pretty much on a weekly basis. So what this toolbox will do, will create a procedural manual so that we can have a series of practical traffic calming devices or measures to be able to respond to all of these requests. This item was presented last year during the CIP. The funding for the project was approved by the City Council. This is one of the recommendations of the Vision Zero. We waited until the Vision Zero was complete, so we have all of the data, so that we can develop these procedural manuals. It's not one or two issues. We have many, many issues in the city, and these needs to be addressed. And each one of these requires a separate traffic study to be able to validate these recommendations. So this will consolidate all of these requests, so we have a good procedural manual.
If I may, Madam Mayor, as a follow-up. The issues of speeding, I see speeding also as some of us do periodically when people get too excited or they're not driving safely. But speeding and speeding's a police department matter, and I'm having a little trouble. Is the manual going to tell the public when? I'm not sure how it relates to typical law enforcement issues. Maybe the chief has thoughts on that, or
if
you.
I may, Anush, sorry, Councilmember Jenkins. So the manual will provide design guidelines that meet our mountain snow environment that could be options for our residential neighborhoods. So a lot of times when Mr. Najad gets a call from speeding complaints, we'll go out there together with the police department representative and look at, why are people speeding? Is the road wide enough that can allow an airplane to land on the road? Is there design improvements that could be added to that roadway that through design mechanisms reduce the travel of a vehicle driving down that road? Those are the conversations we have. We do traffic control with speed radar systems. I think if you were to ask the chief, he'd say he would like to do it more. That comes down to how we allocate our resources for traffic division, for police department or not. But I think the goal of the toolbox, and maybe Mr. Najad wants to clarify this statement, is to really provide guidance so we're managing expectations of our residents. So when they call us, a lot of times they'll call and say, why don't you just put speed bumps here? Why don't you just put a traffic circle? There's a lot of reasons we don't do that, because we want our fire trucks and our police cars to get from point A to point B in a timely manner so they're not driving over speed bumps. We also know that if we put a lot of traffic circles in neighborhoods, our snowplow drivers will have a concern because they're going to be hitting it during snow conditions. I mean, anything else to add to that, Mr. Najad?
Yes, speeding is not only an enforcement issue, it's an engineering issue, it's a traffic issue. And it has to be combined with enforcement, but also a practical engineering solution.
Well, let me, and I'll end this because I think I understand your thoughts on this. But speeding is by people who are idiots, who are in residential areas where by state law says it's 25 miles per hour, and if they're going 45 miles an hour, that they are the problem. It's not design. It's not a lot of things. At least in my uneducated view, that's what it is. But I understand the points you make, and I understand that the previous council, not this council, previous council allocated $100,000. And just for the record, I'm not going to support it because I want to see $100,000 put into street maintenance, and in addition to more funds in the future. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Any other questions?
Yeah, I wasn't going to pull this item, but since we're talking about this, I just wanted to touch on the question of one of the things I've talked about in the past has been Third and Eloise, for example, flipping the directions of the stop signs. I mention that because it's near where it's in the neighborhood where I live, and Eloise is the bike route, is part of the South Tahoe Bikeway. In that area, it's not grade separated. It's on the street there, so it gets in the summertime a huge amount of bike traffic. But the stop sign is on the bike lane, and then the cross traffic on Third has the right of way, and so cars will zip across Eloise at full speed. And cycling, people tend to not want to come to a complete stop and then have to start all over again. That's a lot more effort for a cyclist than it is for a car. And so we had talked about the example of flipping the stop sign around to prioritize bike lanes. That's not the only intersection. That just happens to be the intersection that I use. So I'm familiar with it, but there's a bunch of them along the bikeway that we could consider flipping stop sign directions to prioritize the bike lanes over the car lanes. Would this manual, because I know this is, we've talked about traffic calming, and we generally talk about that in terms of speeding as the primary thought process that brings complaints. People are speeding through my neighborhood. But there's also an aspect of traffic management when it intersects with particularly with our principal bike route, which gets in the summertime just a huge amount of bike traffic. And so as a way of making that safer, does this help with that problem as well? Does this toolbox talk to the problem of what requirements are needed to prioritize bike traffic over vehicle traffic when those lanes intersect?
Yes, if you look at the staff report, the last bullet is exactly talks about that issue. And we do get a lot of requests from different members of the community. So we want to establish really the right procedural manual and also make sure that we protect the city, because all of these have liability implications if we just flip the stop signs or do this or that. So we have to collect the data, we have to evaluate it, we have to look at the manual of uniform traffic control devices and come up with the procedure which is supportable and protects the city.
So if we follow the procedures that are laid out in this document, then we have a defensible position to say, hey, we followed a process. The process itself has been evaluated to be valid per state regulations for making the decision outcomes that result from that. So that way, flipping the stop signs around can be supported by the process that we went through, rather than the way I want to do it, which is just to go out there with a wrench. Both are good, but one is more defensible, so.
Correct. Again, we're trying to make sure that we're following the right process. We have a document that is supportable and that we reduce city's liability.
Okay, I'm not saying going out there with a wrench isn't a process.
It is a process.
It is, I'm not saying going out there with a wrench isn't a process. It is a process and would be much quicker. But fair enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Operance. Any other questions, council? Okay.
Are these grant funds or are these, I think I asked the city manager, but I don't remember the answer. Are these grant funds being used or are these general fund being used?
For this study is general funds.
Thank you, Mr. Public comment, and Mr. Mosier, you're standing there patiently.
Ed Moser, South Lake Tahoe. I'm going to agree with you, Mr. Jenkins. I don't think we should be spending $100,000 on this. Like you mentioned there about excessive perceived speeding along collector and arterial roadways. I've raised the issue and finally after several years, got down to the corner of Park and Pine. As you're heading towards the lake there, it's actually more of a curve than a corner. People go around there 25 to 35, 40 miles an hour. And there's no marked pedestrian crosswalk down there. People walk diagonally. It's very dangerous. I've seen many close calls. People with carriages, baby carriages and stuff. So, I mean, things like that. Put the pedestrian sign up, crossing sign up, but people really don't see that. They still, yesterday I had a car come like about 3-4 feet from me, at excessive speed. So, things like that. We're talking about that, common sense. Conflicts between scooters, pedestrians, forget that one. You really don't need to, you just need to read the state laws and find out that they really don't belong riding on 75-80% of like linear park and all that. It's illegal to ride there and stuff. So you really don't need to spend a dime. You just need to follow state codes and again, common sense. You lose a lot of people. You're worried about getting people and families to come up here, and you lose a lot of people that don't come back because of that. The goal of the document to guide residents in requesting evaluation and blah, 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 feasible solutions to address these concerns. I've pointed, like I said, numerous solutions to you over the years, and only one was fulfilled, and that was that the sign down there, the pedestrian sign, and really does need a stop sign, not the pedestrian crossing sign, but, you know, that's one step on the way to getting the stop sign. Need to get out and walk, you know, instead of spending this, get out and walk the streets, you know, police department, CSOs, employees, drive around, you know, with, a lot of people here seem to drive around with eyes wide shut because you don't notice some of the very simple things that need to be done and that are done in most cities and towns, and that make sense, and, you know, that are dangerous situations created. So, like I said, just drive around with or walk around better with your eyes open, or ride a bike, you know. So, refusal to enforce the e-scooters and e-bike laws. There you have it. You know, it doesn't matter. You don't need to spend $100,000 to do that. You just need to enforce the laws. $152,000 in the general fund. Sat there for 20 years for the extension and completion of the bike, pedestrian and bike, the shared use path from Linear Park to Park Avenue. So that sat there for 20 years. You know, you didn't use that. It's a very dangerous situation there. You know, if you walk that and see what you know, scooters are going over and pedestrians and bicycles and people with kids. And yet that money sat there for 20 years, and now you're using it for the State Line Avenue project, which it wasn't intended for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mosher. Mr. Loberg?
Thank you. $100,000. If that was coming out of your pocket, I don't think you would spend it on a toolbox. That's monies that can be spent on the roads. It's not like it's an unknown quantity that the roads are woefully repaired, underfunded, ignored for, pet projects like buses or transportation. There's a list of stuff up there. It doesn't say, I want to do my pet projects. $100,000 is excessive for some toolbox. I mean, don't we have staff enough that is competent enough to figure out how to do this stuff on their own without having to appeal to some consultants or some software or some toolbox? I mean, come on, that's just utterly ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Loberg. Anyone else in the room that would like to comment on item number 2? Seeing none, we'll move to Zoom.
No hands raised on Zoom, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Blankenship. Mr. Najad, I have a question. You've been here just under 5 years, correct?
4 years.
Okay. 4 years, 2021. You have been called out to Highland Woods, Rocky Point neighborhood, Heavenly, and Lakeview neighborhoods, and you've done some work in those neighborhoods, correct? And this is in order to make it across the community? Because each of those neighborhoods, and I may have missed one, those are just the ones that I'm aware of.
That is correct. We implemented some speed humps on Lakeview. We have implemented other traffic calming measures. But, when we install one, then the community calls and they want the same thing for all of the different neighborhoods. Each one of them require a special study. Therefore, in order to respond to the community, we need to be able to be proactive. And we need to establish guidelines where we can install these speed humps. We spend probably about $250,000 on some of the measures that we have implemented so far. Each one of these measures require probably about 2 weeks of study. We have to do data collection, accident collection, crash collection, and then we have to come up with the solution, meet with the community. What this project will do is to meet with all of the members of the community. We will establish public meetings. We will get their input. We'll come up with practical solutions. And then we will have a list of projects to do when that has been accomplished. So this is not really a toolbox. It's really meeting all of the requirements that the community has expressed so far with all of these traffic calming, cut-through traffic, and other traffic control devices that people are asking. So this is a very typical traffic engineering process that you implement in a city like this.
So just to clarify, what you're saying is that the 4 that I mentioned cost $250,000, whereas this $100,000 will be community-wide and essentially save us money on one-offs.
Correct.
Thank you very much, Mr. Najad. Mr. Jenkins?
You said something, Mr. Najad, that I did not read in the staff report. And what you said was that this plan would be an implementation strategy citywide. What, as I read the staff report, what I gleaned from it was that it was just an information to the public about here's some which you could ask for, rather than an implementation strategy. And I think that's an important piece, that you're going to look at each neighbor area and then say, okay, this is what we can do, as opposed to it's just a manual that gets lost in the stacks of things that we all have. Is that am I fair? Is that a fair statement?
Yes, all of that is in the proposal from the consultant. It will include a couple of public meetings, a presentation to City Council. We'll come up with a list of projects which are practical for South Lake Tahoe, and then we'll look at where the funding will come for those implementation. But then we will have a program to be able to implement.
And so I'm just curious, so in this toolbox, or let's call it a toolbox, will also be able to be used for future things. So somebody gives you a call from somewhere that we're not looking at, it kind of makes it where you're not going to have to go back and do this study each time. You're able to pull from the toolbox, implement it as we go forward into the future as well, yeah?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, with that, I'll put forward a motion authorizing and directing the mayor to execute an agreement with TJKM Transportation Consultants for an amount not to exceed $100,000 to prepare the citywide traffic calming toolbox.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we can vote.
Can I explain my note?
That motion carries. Thank you.
Quickly.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. What I hope that soon we can be looking at using state funds that are allocated for both transit and streets to fund things, rather than looking at all street issues to be funded through the general fund. And I understand there's some initiatives to do that. I'd like to see them sooner than later, accomplishment, and that the city take whatever action it needs to take to get our funds, our Transit Development Act funds, back to us, rather than giving it to regional agencies to do whatever they want to do with it. So I wish that this kind of thing could be funded through something like that, or other grant funds, which I know you're very good at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jenkins. Okay, moving on to item number 9. Mr. Robbins, do you need a staff report, or you said you just had questions?
I just have a question. I do not need the
Okay,
staff report.
Mr. Stark is here to answer your questions.
So all of this is great. I actually don't have an issue at all with the item itself. I just had a question peripheral to it. We've done, the ACT committee has done art installations here at the airport. This is for an art installation at Lakeview Commons. This is the one where it's the wire mesh cages with like animals inside it. And
That's right.
et cetera. Yeah, because it just didn't have a picture. I assume that's what it was. So one thing I wanted to ask about is that the airport, so Lakeview Commons is sort of right in the middle of town, and it's heavily trafficked. And so it's great to have like some of the art that we're doing through the commission there, where the people already are. But of course, it's an outdoor location, so only certain kinds of art are suitable for that kind of environment. We've done art displays here at the airport, but the challenge is the airport is kind of out of the way, except for, a solid handful of people who work, in the offices here, and a much smaller handful of local government nerds. There's not a lot of foot traffic here. I mean, I guess there'll be more with the restaurant when it opens. My question is, has there been any consideration with the commission about collaborating with other local government agencies to put art in other places that get heavily trafficked? Obviously, once it comes online, the rec center will be sort of a high-profile place to do our installations, but it's not built yet. Particularly, I had in mind things like the public library, which is El Dorado County. Possibly, the community college does put art in their college from their art department already in that same sort of way, right near their library, and it might be nice for us to do the same. And yeah, it's the county's building, it's not our building, but from the standpoint of the community, these are all just community resources. So I'm wondering if there's been any thought to doing indoor art displays at more centralized locations, even if, more centralized public locations, even if they're not our buildings.
Yeah, I think that your comment about the new rec center is certainly a possibility. The airport here is something that the city has the ability to access, of course, so.
It's ours, we own it.
It's ours, so. But, going forward, that could be, a future agenda item for the Arts, Culture, and Tourism Committee to consider, some other locations that, we could partner with.
Yeah, there's definitely, there's some room for, I don't know what the library would have to say about it. I mean, we haven't talked to them. So, there's definitely some room in places where art could potentially go. And I think it'd be great if the ACT Commission would consider that. Can that be something that is put on their agenda to consider?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for the feedback.
Okay, that was my thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Stark. Is there any other questions from Mr. Stark? Okay, seeing none. I'll just point out, Mr. Robbins, that the college has 3 galleries. They have the student art gallery, an outside art gallery, and then they have an art gallery in the lobby of the Duke Theater. So.
I was thinking of the one in the library because I'm in there regularly for the conference room
So
that's in there.
that's
But
the
they,
student art gallery, but they have 2 other galleries that provide space for outside people, and they have ongoing
and
different
it's,
things.
it's great because those are pretty highly trafficked locations.
They
So
are.
there's a lot of opportunity for people to see and interact with the art. And we're funding some art, and that's great. A great art makes for a great community. But it'd be nice to think about places that are where more people will come across it in their day-to-day than just the airport. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the airport, it's fine. But, having other locations like the library, which is, a lot of families go there, it gets locations. There's other outdoor areas that are not just owned by the city as well, that might be of consideration. And so that would require coordination with other local agencies, though I would imagine they'd be happy to have art at no cost. But that would have to be that's a thing to do. So if that could come up at a future ACT Commission to consider, I think that would be greatly appreciated. And if it does, I would appreciate just a heads up about that.
Sounds great.
Thank you, Mr. Stark.
Thanks.
Is there any member of the public that would like to make public comment on item number 9? Mr. Loberg?
Yes, nothing was said as to why this has to be extended, why the completion date wasn't completed on time. And is this going to be an additional cost? There's no amount down here. If it's done in September, the visitors aren't going to get to see it. If people can't get their projects done on time, then you get other people. You just tell them, see you later, it's not going to work, take all your stuff, and we'll find somebody that can do it on time. It's ridiculous to keep extending stuff. Other projects get extended, and there's money, there's 10% contingency fee that gets spent every time. It's ridiculous.
Thank you, Mr. Loberg. Any other member of the public that would like to make a public comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll move to Zoom.
No comments on Zoom, Mayor.
Mr. Stark, could you please come to the dais or the podium? Could you address, I know that I was told why it was being extended, but could you just please answer that question?
There's no additional funds being
No additional
expensed,
funds.
And it's being extended due to the length of the planning process. We're working with an artist. This is a new installation, new process for them. We're working closely with them and city staff, and it's taking additional time. So we're requesting additional time to complete the project.
Thank you, Mr. Stark. Bring it back to council for further discussion or a motion.
I move to pass a motion authorizing and directing the mayor to execute Amendment Number 1 agreement with Terry Bennett for a public art installation at Lakeview Commons, extending the completion date of the contract to September 1, 2025.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Oops, I'm sorry.
Nice. No vote.
I got a little fast there. I'm sorry.
Robbins and Roberts.
Oh, my goodness.
It's the R's.
Are we short 2 votes?
Yeah, she's redoing it.
I
Oh, no worries.
hit record too fast. Please vote again. I got you all this time. That motion unanimously carries.
Thank you, Ms. Blankenship.
We're gonna have
Okay.
to have a recount.
Moving on to the consent agenda for the South Tahoe Redevelopment Successor Agency. We have one item on that. Item number 10. Council, do you have any thing to add or any recusals? Seeing none, we will move to public comment on item number 10. Seeing none, we'll move to Zoom.
There are no hands raised on Zoom,
Okay.
Mayor.
Bring it back to council for,
I'll put forward a motion that we approve the consent agenda for the South Tahoe Redevelopment Successor Agency.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Everybody please vote.
Public comment on this? Just missed it. Okay. I didn't even notice. It slipped right by me.
That motion unanimously carries.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Bass. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we'll come back right at 7 o'clock. Mr. Robbins?
No, Scott, if it comes back,
Okay, we're bringing the meeting back to order and moving on to our public hearing. Item number 11, amendments to the timeshare ordinance, confirming that fractional ownerships are timeshares and making other updates. Ms. Stroud?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Heather Stroud, City Attorney. So this item is being brought to council at the request of council late last year. This ordinance has not been amended since 2006, so it is due for a bit of an update. There has been a new type of timeshare that's popped up not only in South Lake Tahoe, but in other parts of the state and around the country in recent years. That is a fractional ownership of single-family residences where those are split into usually between 4 and 8 shares and then operated as a timeshare. In 2021, the city started to get complaints about several properties operating in that manner here. And at that time, I sent out a courtesy notice and then a cease and desist notice to the company who was doing that, which is Picasso, and to the South Tahoe Association of Realtors, who cooperated at that time to take down advertisements of those properties. So that prevented any more from being established, but 3 properties that were in use prior to the cease and desist letter continue to be used in that manner. So in late 2024, those shares were being resold and advertised by Picasso, and that resulted in some citations issued from our code enforcement division. After those were appealed, instead of having the appeal, we entered into settlement agreements for those 3 properties with Picasso, in which they formally agreed not to expand anymore in South Lake Tahoe, in exchange for the city agreeing to not enforce against those 3 properties so that the shares could continue to be resold. At that time, City Council asked for this amendment to come back forward, just to make crystal clear that this type of fractional ownership is a timeshare that is not allowed under our ordinance in residential areas. There's a few other cleanup amendments included, for example, removing references to outdated TRPA regulations and fixing some of the definitions or updating them to be consistent with state law, namely the Vacation Ownership and Timeshare Act of 2004, which is in the Business and Professions Code. And with that, I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Stroud. Mr. Jenkins?
Thank you, Ms. Stroud. So the amendments that are proposed here, if I understood what you said and based on our earlier meetings that we've had, it relate to making it clear in the code that single-family homes can't be fractional ownered, can't be used as fractional ownership.
Yeah, the change to accomplish that is in the definition of timeshare, to make it clear that fractional ownerships are a timeshare. And so our code already does not allow timeshares in residential areas.
Does this ordinance or the code allow fractional ownerships in any location in the city?
Well, timeshares are allowed in some areas of the city.
But aren't timeshares different because they're renting space in a unit where it's a fractional ownership is where the property itself is owned by several people?
So this type of fractional ownership is where it results in essentially only being able to use the property for a rotating certain amount of time per year. So that's what makes it a timeshare. So if you bought a property with some family members or friends and you owned it together, that's not a fractional ownership that would be considered a timeshare.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Stroud? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on item number 11? Seeing none, we'll move to Zoom.
There are no hands raised at this time, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Blankenship. Bring it back to council for further discussion or a motion.
Let's go right ahead, Mr. James.
Motion to approve, let's see, so I'll read this so the city clerk will be happy with me. Hold the first reading of by title only of an ordinance approving Chapter 6.60 of the South Lake Tahoe City Code timeshare, confirming that fractional ownerships are timeshares, and making other updates, and refer to second reading and adoption to the June 3rd, 2025 meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
That motion unanimously carries.
Thank you, Ms. Blankenship. Moving on to item number 12, City Development Rights Annual Report. Catherine Moore. Thank you, Ms. Moore.
Good evening, Mayor Wallace and City Council members. For the record, my name is Catherine Moore, and I'm an assistant planner with the City of South Lake Tahoe. The agenda item before you is the City Development Rights Annual Report. The city has an inventory of development rights and land coverage that have been accumulated from various sources and are available to the public. Please note that I will refer to development rights and land coverage as development commodities for the rest of the presentation. The city currently offers these development commodities to the public at 1/3 of the market value. Pursuant to Resolution 2023-051, City Council will review an appraisal of last year's market value of development commodities in order to establish their price point for the current year. Before diving into the report, I would like to provide some brief definitions of certain terms. Land coverage is any impervious surface on the site. Development rights are land use rights that correlate to how a parcel is used. The three types of development rights include residential units of use, commercial floor area, and tourist accommodation units. Land coverage and development rights are the primary ways that TRPA regulates and maintains development in the Tahoe Basin. The city has retained Mr. Ben Johnson to prepare the appraisal for this year's annual report. Please refer to Attachment 4 for the revised appraisal of development commodities for the year 2024. Mr. Johnson's scope of work included interviewing representatives from the primary land bank agencies in the Tahoe Basin, developers, and land use consultants that have experience with development commodities. Mr. Johnson also did extensive research on the existing market conditions, completed a comparable sales analysis, and recommended a fair market value for each development commodity. In this year's appraisal, Mr. Johnson is recommending changes to the market value for commercial floor area, potential and full residential units of use, and tourist accommodation units. The revised appraisal also includes a new category for Stream Environment Zone or SEZ restoration credits. The recommended market values and the proposed price points for all city-owned development commodities can be found in Exhibit 1 to the resolution. For commercial floor area, the appraisal recommends increasing the fair market value from $22.50 per square foot to $25 per square foot. For potential residential units of use, the appraisal recommends increasing the fair market value from $5,000 to $15,000. For residential units of use, the appraisal recommends increasing the fair market value from $28,750 to $32,500. For tourist accommodation units, the appraisal recommends increasing the fair market value from $25,000 to $27,500. Other than these specific development commodities, the fair market value for all other development commodities have not changed compared to last year's appraisal. As mentioned earlier, the revised appraisal provides research regarding SEZ restoration credits. This is a new development commodity that will be offered to the public. Restoration credits can be used to mitigate impacts of development in stream environment zones. Mr. Johnson recommends the fair market value for SEZ restoration credits to be $30 per square foot. City staff recommends accepting the development rights appraisal prepared by Johnson Valuation Group Limited and establishing a price point for the calendar year 2025 at 1/3 of the recommended fair market values as outlined in the appraisal. That concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions that you may have, and Mr. Ben Johnson is available on Zoom if you have any questions pertaining to the appraisal itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Mr. Robbins?
2023 residential unit of use valuation, existing residential unit of use valuation was $15,000 per unit. 2 years later, that's now, the recommendation is $32,500. That is an increase in valuation of more than 100% in just 2 years. What accounts for the more than doubling of that cost in such a short time?
I will defer that question to Ben if he's on Zoom.
Ms. Blankenship, is Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Is Mr. Johnson?
Yes, I have two Mr. Johnsons on there. Mr. Johnson, would you like to address council?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. So it's a thinly traded commodity. Unfortunately, the values do move based on market participants' expected future demand. What we've seen is just greater demand for that commodity of use, to be frank, in the market. And that's why the value is doubled. It doesn't track how the single-family residential market moves, the commercial market moves. It's solely this commodity and buyers and sellers' expectations.
I guess this question's for staff. Can a tourist accommodation unit be converted into a residential unit of use permit? I know the answer. I'm asking it for the public record.
Yes.
What is the cost associated with making that conversion?
Based on this year's cost or last year's?
What is the cost to convert a TAU into an RUU at present?
For the record, John Hitchcock. So that would be a TRP application fee, and I believe it's around a little over $1,000.
And is that conversion a matter of right or a discretionary matter?
It's a matter of right.
Then why is the cost valuation for a tourist accommodation use $27,500, but a residential unit of use cost is $32,500 with a price spread of $5,000 between the two, if one is convertible into the other?
I would defer to Mr. Johnson on that, but I believe it may have to do with the scarcity of the development right itself.
Sorry, we just said
Mr.
one's
Johnson?
convertible into the other, so why is there a price spread that's far in excess of the conversion fee cost? 5 times the cost of the conversion fee, as a matter of fact.
Well, I think this appraisal, and Mr. Johnson can probably chime in, that these appraisal are looking at comps of actual development rights that are being sold on the open market, and the appraisal is based on the findings that the appraisal comes up with. And so we're basically reporting back to you what the market is bearing for each one of these development rights.
So the market's bearing a $5,000 spread, even though the cost of conversion between one asset class to the other is a fifth of that?
And if I may, Mr. Robbins, that's correct. It's an inefficient market. I've expected the market to equalize. TRPA's expected the market to equalize, but it hasn't. And what I've been told consistently from developers and land use planners is there's not always an adequate supply of the commodity available. They want certainty. They don't want any risk. So they're willing to pay a premium because it's such a low cost relative to the overall cost of development to know that they're going to have the correct commodity. But it's a market inefficiency, in my opinion. But the market does bear out, and transactions have happened at that pricing level.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins. Any other questions? Mr. Jenkins?
Mayor, you may want me to, I have comments, so you may want, after there's
Okay,
more
we'll
questions.
wait until after public comment. Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Moore.
Yes, thank you. Very good presentation.
Is there any member of the public that would like to make a comment on item number 12? Mr. Mosher?
Ed Moser, South Lake Tahoe. Mr. Robbins, I was at the TRPA meeting when they came up with their charts and conversion charts and went to do that, and they actually made a very simple mathematical mistake, reversing the two when you went from one side to the other and stuff. They had to come back in the next meeting and correct it. So from the very beginning, this has been a rather strange process. thing is, I don't, of the evaluations and then selling them for a third of market value, if you look at what we paid for some of these, we paid top dollar usually for, through redevelopment and along the way and the Whole Foods project and stuff, paid top dollar for the commodities and then selling them for a third. So, Heavenly Village, I asked a few years ago and try to find out just exactly how much that cost us, buying all the properties up and clearing it and then sell it, and never did get an answer, and there aren't records for the sales of some of them that I requested, some of the properties, but I was told somewhere in the $75-85 million range, and then Hal Cole, being questioned, he kind of sheepishly a couple of times that I asked, said that it was sold for around $2 million. To Marriott. So, to which I responded, I said, well, Hal Cole didn't make his money on deals like this. So spending $85 million and then selling it for $2 million. So, with the Whole Foods project there are 88 spaces in the garage, and the same gentleman, Mr. Johnson, did the appraisal for the southwest corner lot, $800,000, and mentioned the 88 parking spaces that were deeded to the property. And, but didn't really put a value to it, just mentioned that they were 88 spaces deeded to it. And just prior to that, not too long before that, the city did a study and found out that it was going to be $14,000 and change to build a parking garage and to create one, and around $14,000 plus per space. So for those 88 spaces, we're around roughly around $1.2 million we're worth in the deal. They got that for nothing. And, like I said, Mr. Johnson did the study for that, and it was just completely ignored. So we got shorted out at least $1.2 million out of that deal. So, yeah, I look at why we're spending top dollar for these commodities and then selling them for a third. That's not the way you make money or even break even. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mosher. Anybody else like to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll move to Zoom.
There are no hands raised at this time, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Jenkins, you had some comments?
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. I have discussed my concerns with both the city manager, city attorney, and I appreciated very much the comments that Mr. Hitchcock made in response. I want to reiterate something I said to them, that I am actually unaware of authority for a general law city in California to gift public funds for private purpose. That was something that under redevelopment, which Governor Brown eliminated in 2012, and I was just unaware of that. Even if allowed, I do not think the practice is prudent. Developers of private property should pay the city the fair market value for development rights. By the way, I think the right itself is fictional. It's a fictional right that we've created up here, this fictional commodity, and that it doesn't exist anywhere else that I'm aware of. But it is what it is. It is the system. I'm not saying there was bad reasons for it. It's a fictional commodity. But developers should be paying the fair market value because the decision of how those funds are used should be made by the city council, not by a policy that was made 5 years ago, but by a policy that we make on an annual basis that comes to the council for discussion based on what our priorities, city council's priorities are, and input from the public. What I am also concerned is that where we are gifting these, that we are not creating a one-dimensional economic economy in this city. I'm troubled by that thought because, to my knowledge and my experience, I know of no community that is successful that doesn't encourage investment, market rate investment into the community. So you diversify the economic base, with people pay taxes so we can afford salaries and things that we need to do, environmental improvements. If we don't do this, and if we're giving away commodities, I'm concerned that we're going to create that one-dimensional society. Town centers, TRPA doesn't want market rate units in town centers. Well, you know what? Too bad. We need mixed use. If you read the literature that goes back many years, you don't put one economy in one economic picture in one area, because it doesn't work. You can go back to Jane Jacobs and Life and Death of Great American Cities and a whole lot of old literature that nobody reads anymore.
I've read Jacobs.
Oh, yeah, you know Jane Jacobs. So I guess the base point is that I'd like to see the council, I'd like to see the policy revision. I'd like to see the council have a discussion as part of the budget on, and I don't think it's appropriate for us under most circumstances to give commodities that have value, the public's value, away to anyone. So that's my comment.
Mr. Robbins, you had some comments?
Yes. I want to build laterally on a few things Mr. Jenkins said. So these are artificial commodities that were created through public government action. Right? These are not resource limitations that exist in the natural world. These are artificially created resources. And my concern with that, as we've just talked about here, and going through the appraisal material, the actual appraisal report, is that after the public government created these commodities, the trading of these commodities happens in a dark market, right? It happens off the books. It happens outside of public view. It happens in a non-public way for private undisclosed prices with private undisclosed sellers and private undisclosed buyers. It is a dark market for a publicly created commodity. That is a moral hazard that's been created there. Publicly created commodities should be traded in open, visible, transparent marketplaces. That is, when you buy and sell one, the buyers and the sellers, the price of that transaction should be listed publicly, like on an exchange. Now, this is done in the real world for highly traded commodities in sophisticated ways, but this is a thinly, lightly traded thing. It can be done on a web page, right? This is not a complex operation here to keep the trading of these commodities and the price of these commodities public and recorded so that we have a clear picture of how much these things cost. Having these on a dark market is completely inappropriate for a fictitious, artificially created commodity that was created by a government that then allows the trading in those commodities to happen behind closed doors. And there is something we can do about that, or at least indirectly, and I would suggest that this council take action to direct a letter to the TRPA saying that we want the trading in commodity rights that are these created, constructed commodity rights to be done in public, have them be auctioned correctly and have the price of the transactions publicly listed so that we know what their actual spot value is from day to day as they're traded. Because to have these hidden and unknown introduces complete artificial risk to developers or builders, right? You don't know how much these commodities cost. If you want to, particularly because we have on our agenda, or on our strategic plan, an item to bring in elements of SB 9 into residential neighborhoods that would allow slightly higher density, to build a duplex on the same footprint that we currently build these McMansions. But that's going to require, if you do that, an additional RUU. You're going to need 2 RUUs for that one parcel that might only otherwise come with one. So you need to buy them off of a market that at the moment is dark and hidden and unknown, which introduces unnecessary risk. And that risk is introduced completely artificially, not through natural causes, not through weather, not through fluctuations, but just because we have decided that the market for these commodities is to be hidden out of sight of the public. So we should, I recommend that we as a council direct staff to craft a formal letter of request that the TRPA place the trading of the commodities that they have created and the pricing of sales of the commodities that they have created into public view. And so that when someone wants to sell one, it's listed for sale on a website. When it's purchased, the value, the price of that is listed on a website so that developers can know how much these commodities are currently going for when they want to do their plans.
Is there any support for Mr. Robbins' idea of sending a letter to TRPA requesting that? If you
I'm
support the letter, great. If not, we're going to move on. 1 second to Ms. Stroud. She has something.
Please, I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, I just wanted to address the gift of public funds issue that was brought up by Councilmember Jenkins. So this policy has been used by City Council for the past 5 or 6 years, I think, as an economic development tool. So the rule is correctly that you can't gift public funds for a private purpose, but if there's a public purpose, then it's not considered a gift of public funds. And here the public purpose would be to encourage the type of development that City Council has wanted to see. And so this policy has been revised several times since it was first adopted and tweaked to encourage the kind of development and economic development that City Council has wanted to see.
Thank you, Ms. Stroud. Mr. Jenkins, really quickly before we go to you, I was the one that brought this to the council originally several years ago, and it was for the exact purpose that Ms. Stroud is talking about. And I'll share a little bit of background with you so that you're aware of why I came up with this. It's because I sat in the audience for many, many years before I was on city council, and I watched the council that was seated make decisions that were all over the place. One person would come up and ask to purchase commodities, and they would give it to them for $6.22 a foot, like coverage. Another one would come up and they would charge them between $20 and $30 a foot. And it had nothing to do with where it was coming from or how much it was purchased. I was attempting to put some of that consistency that developers need in order to come in. And so that's how this policy was developed. And Ms. Stroud, I have a question for you. In the resolution, I didn't see where, my understanding is that all sales of commodities, not all sales, but the majority of sales from our commodities go into a affordable housing fund. And we've raised approximately $400,000 over the last 5-6 years.
I couldn't speak to the amount raised, although Development Services staff may know, but yes, except for the commodities that were
Tied to the
either
airport.
tied to the airport or the Successor agency,
Perfect.
they'd go to the housing fund.
Thank you. So that's where that came from, Mr. Jenkins, is an attempt to spur economic development, to give consistency to developers, and to take some of the guesswork out of having to come before council and say, hey, I want to pay for these. How much will you give it for me today? And I literally saw it go from $6 all the way up to almost $30. And that's just on coverage.
Well, Mayor, I'd like to applaud you for trying to get some rational basis for disposal of city assets. I guess what I'm wondering, it is to me very unusual in my limited local government experience to have the city gift commodities of artificial commodities, the value of which are for whatever purpose. And I think the council, not a policy made 5 years ago, should be making those decisions on an annual basis based upon the needs and conditions that change over time. And I support Councilmember Robbins' suggestion in regard to the current system of making sure that those prices are known and they're not on a dark market. I support that idea. But I would like also, if possible, that we review this issue as part of our budget so that allocations don't become automatic in the future based on past policy. The last part of this is, I think we are doing a lot. We have done a lot. This council has done a lot. Previous councils have done a lot, if you want to look back 20 years or 15 years of the investment. And I think we are doing our part already in affordable housing, and I want this region to do its part and not expect the taxpayers of this city to be funding affordable housing forever because they are NIMBYs in other parts of the region. And I would just like to see more of a shared responsibility and for that. So those are really the two comments that I had. I'd like to see the council review these matters on an annual basis based on priorities. And I agree with Mr. Robbins that it would be good to have this a letter to TRPA saying we want more transparency on this issue.
Mr. Roberts, I'm going to come to you in just a second. Mr. Jenkins, I agree with you that the council should review it annually, and that's why it comes to us annually in this format. And we can review it now. We can review.
I want to see the budget. I want to see the budget of the city, the proposed budget based upon the revenues in the new fiscal year, not 6 months in advance of the budget, but when the budgets come, then I want to look at these issues, not make them in advance based upon what we think the issues are, because we're facing a financial crisis in this state and in this nation, and I don't know what the impact is on our budgets. And I guess the last part of that is, and I'm not angry, I'm just motivated. The last part of that is that I don't like us gifting public resources to anybody except under a structure that we discuss maybe on an annual basis. That's all.
Again, this is the annual time. And wait,
This is
hold
not
on.
the budget, though, Mayor. This is when we discuss matters of where we allocate money at the time of the budget. That's historical. That's the way it's done in most cities in California, and we need to do it here. Not do it in advance, but do it when the budget comes up.
So,
If I may, Madam Mayor, sorry,
Thank you.
Ms. Tikamarova, the money generated from the sale of these commodities, it was stated earlier, that's been generated over the last few years has gone to the housing fund. That's correct. And it hasn't been much more than 400,000 total in 5 years.
and
So it's
Yes, and-
under.
So
what is
I would say it's underperforming. It's a very small part of the annual budget. If we don't sell these commodities for that purpose, then we will just have $400,000 less, maybe $150,000 less in our annual budget to support housing programs.
Well, I would argue I would argue the reverse. If we would charge at the market rate and we're using it for economic growth purposes rather than as determined annually by the council, then the revenue we get might be much larger, and maybe the revenue in part should go to streets for street maintenance, as has been brought up historically here.
I don't know the elasticity demand curve for the pricing of this, but the item for council right now,
Market.
the question for council right now gives you full authority to say, we don't want to do 1/3. Make it 3/3. Charge full rate. You can accept their appraisal and do a full rate right now. And we can come back in a year and see if it turned 400,000 into 1.2 million. If that did, great.
I just want to clarify, it's 400,000 over 5 years, so an average of 80,000 per year.
Yeah,
I just want to
so-
clarify that for the public.
And the majority of it wasn't in RUUs for development of housing. It was for coverage in the industrial park. But Mr. Roberts, you have your hand raised.
Just back to Mr. Robbins' request for writing a letter to the TRPA, and I appreciate your comments and where you're going, and I appreciate Mayor Wallace's background on how this came about. But a simple question is, I didn't understand when you're talking about, are you talking about not being involved in a black market and having these values out there in the public view? Is that because to create more transparency for the city works, so that we're not functioning inside a black market and we're not exposing ourselves like this? Or is your direction to help the contractors? I just was a little confused.
Yeah, so let me just separate a couple of things here, two separate things. One discussion we've been having, I'm just organizing the thoughts we've all had going around here. So one conversation that's happening concurrently here is, what should we do with the commodities we own and how much should we sell them for and what the price? That's totally legit. That's a conversation, but that's a separate conversation from the fact that the marketplace on which the commodities are traded generally, in which the city participates through the process and the pricing structure we've allocated here, that market overall is what's called a dark market. And I just want to clarify, it's not a black market. We're not selling drugs. Well, kind of, but we're not selling, we're not selling drugs.
Drugs
It's-
actually exist.
Illegal drugs, so we're not selling illegal drugs. So the term of art here is a dark market in the sense, what it refers to is the fact that there's no public visibility into the pricing of the elements that are being traded on that market. So it's referred to as dark, as opposed to illegal and underground. So that's a black market. So those are two. So those are two. They share a connection point, but they're two separate issues, and I just don't want us to get them confused. So the concern is that the fact that the commodities are traded on a dark market means that there's no public record of who's offering commodities for sale and what the price of what the option price is to purchase that commodity that's being sold, or what the history of prices was for the last several that were sold. So if you go buy stock on the stock market, that's a transparent market, ostensibly. The price, yeah, I understand, but the idea is the price for which those elements are traded is publicly recorded, right? The buyers and sellers can be anonymous; they don't have to be publicly listed, but the prices are publicly traded, and they're traded through an exchange that handles that then lists the price at which they're sold. So that's a transparent market. And the problem with dark markets is that it constructs a risk for someone who wants to engage in an activity that requires the purchase of that commodity, because you don't know ahead of time what the commodity is, and you don't know where to go buy them. So the price of the RUU has fluctuated by over 100% in 2 years, principally as the contractor was talking about, because it's a thinly traded, meaning it's very few trades per year, and there's no public recording of the prices. So all deals are made one-to-one. And if you look at the actual report, I'll give you an example here on page 19 of the report. This is how they found out pricing. This is how the vendor has found out pricing. They talked to Wyatt Oglivy, and he says he facilitated a couple of RU transfers that ranged in price from 30 to 32. Nick Exline said his most recent was $35.50. Dustin Allen of Sierra Sotheby's sold one in 24 for $3,500, and that's it. And so and we talked to some other guy and that he wasn't aware of any. So it's literally, we're finding out prices by talking to a few folks and seeing what they did. That's not a transparent market. And if you're a developer, if you want to build a duplex, right, because we have this agenda item coming up where we're going to try and allow for duplexes, or you're trying to put in an ADU or something else, and you're trying to develop something, and you need an additional RUU, it completes a complete unknown about what that price element is going to be in your planning process. And that risk that's introduced is completely artificially induced. It's not a risk that comes from it's not about the price of lumber in Canada, and it's not about import tariffs on whatever from overseas that you have no control over. It's literally a risk that was constructed through a system that was specifically designed to introduce that risk for no good reason. So I'm suggesting that we request, since it's not our system, that we request, and it's probably something that I suspect has simply not been considered, because the TRPA isn't on the ass end of this problem. So I'm just recommending that we make a request to the TRPA to say.
Is that 2 words or 1 word?
I will defer. I will defer to the grammarians.
I support it. I think that, though, as you just kind of said, it may not be something they've considered. So it might be something of like, let's sit down with them, see if it's, and then if we need to,
let's do a letter. We've had this on our process list since I started on council, and our first strategic plan was to do more of make requests as a council to our regional governments to do improvements. And I can think of no clearer. This is a good point to start, because this is entirely within the TRPA's wheelhouse. They can just do this.
I support it too, Mr. Robbins, and I think that you have the support that you need.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Bass, did you have anything else
Well,
to
yeah,
add?
I guess my only other question is, if we want to go and say we don't want to discount this at a third, we want to put them at full market value, do we not have the leeway, though, to also say at the same time, if we have projects that we want to support in development that we give the staff the leeway to work within that third, like, and I don't know, I know that may get tricky on how to determine what those projects are, but I
That's
think
how we
they're.
got here.
Yeah, that is how we got here. And, but in a sense, like, I do think that if it's a development project or some type of project that isn't a huge incentive to us, why are we giving a 2/3 discount? You know what I mean? And I see why we are in certain projects that really have an economic incentive and really have, you get what I mean? So I'm just wondering, do we?
Given the way, though, we operate, which is good, is that it's important for staff to know where the council is coming from on some of these issues. So as we used to do with redevelopment projects, when you bring the deal, if you will, you would bring the deal to the body and say, look, we want to do this for this reason. Council blesses it, so the staff isn't put in a position where they're, someone says, well, I didn't like that deal you made. So it gives the policy body that sets the budget, bring the deal. If it's a good deal, we're going to support it. If it's,
Like what Ms. Wallace said, that's
Well,
right where we were.
That's why it went from $6.20. I can tell you exactly the background.
well, I can tell you a lot of background on the issue of deals.
As can I,
yeah.
because I used to work in economic development, and I can tell you,
Well,
cities give land away all the time.
Well, the cities, not in the cities that I worked in, and not this city. Well, we gave other things away in RDA, but that was a different process. We had special tax revenue. And so and when they killed RDA, I think they killed a lot of the ability to do it. I think, though, we should know where we're giving the public's commodity to whom, for what price, and I think that's a city council decision, not something that we want to thrust on the staff. That's all.
I agree, and that's why we developed this policy 5 years ago. If we want to change it, then let's talk about changing it. I will tell you that I am in support of the current policy for a multitude of reasons. One is my understanding, having spent the time in the room, was that the only time that we had anything other than one-offs on RUUs and things like that when during building season was the large amount that Barton purchased of coverage, I believe it was coverage, for the Maloff Center, and that was the one that went at $6.22. And then another developer came in and was buying a good portion of coverage and was equally as good, as far as I'm concerned, in an economic development realm, and they were being charged almost $30 a foot. And so this, to me, and again, I support it because I helped develop it. But I think that we're trying to give consistency, and nothing was moving. So we can have a ton of commodities at market rate and nobody buys them, or we have the commodities that we have and we actually have movement on it so that we can use those dollars in our community. So if we want to change the policy, I will not be voting for that, but that's okay. It's the policy of the council.
I just
there
think-
were reasons.
Yeah,
behind it.
I'm sure there's reasons for a lot of things that all of us done over time. There's lots of reasons based on conditions that we know and conditions that may have existed. All I'm suggesting, and I'm trying to reasonably, is that the council should review the policy during the budget process. We talk about we're going to initiate a business retention, expansion, and new business development. We're going to encourage economic growth in this city. I'd like to see a policy that's tied around that in a way that's a realistic way. But let's make that decision when we have a program, and let's make that decision when we discuss the budget and what we need to operate the city, and also what we want to do to create incentives to businesses to retain, expand, and new business development. And that's all I'm suggesting.
So, Mr. Jenkins, I'm going to ask Ms. Cheeker-Marova a question, maybe Mr. Irvin. So if we were to change the policy and have this discussion at budget time, would that give you any more information? And the reason I'm asking is because we don't know who's buying what or when and for what price. And so we would not be able to quote-unquote budget for this.
Well, that's what that's what Mr. Robbins is
So
suggesting.
these two issues have a point of intersection, but they are two separate issues, but they do connect.
Right, but even if we write the letter and TRPA puts an open, transparent market, would we still know at any time how many people are going to want to buy them, or how many of them? No,
Hopefully,
because
right, because you'd go through their website to You'd go through their website to request to buy, and you'd go through the website to offer to sell. So
That's-
you'd have buyers and sellers being matched.
Right, and they have a marketplace right now. There is an online marketplace, Mr. Hitchcock, isn't there?
There's an online open place, it just doesn't show the price.
It doesn't show the price. I agree. I'm just telling you, we don't know who's gonna want to buy our stuff.
But Mayor.
Again, a different issue, but yes.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'm saying, I think we need this little time, we need the communication with TRPA so they know where we stand. And I also think if we're doing an active retention, business retention, expansion, new business development, we're gonna have, our staff is going to have clues of who wants to do what, because we're encouraging active new investment into our community that we have to have in order to prosper for businesses and for revenue to run the city and et cetera, job creation and others. So we are going to have the base of information of who's interested because they're going to be coming to us, not going to the regional agency. They're going to be talking to us about it.
So there's so there's also there's also sort of two issues here that are we already talked about the dark market aspect, so that sounds settled. There's also still two other issues that are being talked about here. One is the issue of this used to be done by way of ad hoc transactions through the council, and it would be better if this was done through a uniform policy.
Mm-hmm.
That is a related but separate issue from what should the pricing structure of that uniform policy then be. Having decided that it should be a uniform policy, what should we price these things at? Those are related, but they're two separate. And the idea that we should not be doing development deals in this kind of ad hoc way, I think is the right move. I agree with Mayor Wallace that we really need to be organized and predictable and consistent. The right thing to do is to have a clearly laid out policy and process that says this is how the city will sell development rights that it has. And that is uniform across the city. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's the same in all neighborhoods. It's just that it is a pre-constructed policy that we have agreed on so that everyone engaging in the process is on the same playing field. So that we don't have one person coming before the lectern one day saying, I'd like to buy one, will you sell it to me for $6.25? And the next one, 3 days later, coming through and say, well, I don't like the cut of your beard, so we're gonna sell it to you for $8.50. That's not a good way, that's not good governance. But then that's a separate issue from what should the sales policy actually be. Having decided that we should have a uniform constructed policy that everyone meets with that operates with for the same way, then the next question is, what should the pricing structure be? And I don't think there's sense in reviewing do we have a uniform structure? I think that's a really good idea. But I'm happy, and this is the time in which we can say, what pricing do we want? But that's different than saying, do we want to have a uniform pricing model? I think we do, and I'm open to discussing what the pricing should be. And we already have in our structure here something that I think makes sense, which is we have a pricing variance if you do a more pro-community, if you do something that is necessarily less profitable, but more valuable to the community, like build high-density housing or build affordable housing.
Job creation.
But I'm saying, that is the discussion, right? Is we put something in the policy that says, if you do X thing that is valuable to the city, we can discount the development right by a certain amount. And if you do something that's completely open market and not as valuable, then you pay a different amount. But that's decided. That is this meeting, and that we decide. But here's the other thing to bear in mind. I understand that we want to consider all things concurrently. It is worth noting that the average impact on the budget has been $80,000 a year. So yes, there's a budget impact, but at $80,000 a year to the housing budget, it's better than zero. But it's not. Let's not kid ourselves that this is a huge amount. This is a huge revenue issue.
It's not a revenue issue, but it definitely can incentivize some development, and I think that's the idea behind it.
The development
That's the
is the
incentive.
revenue issue.
But I think that you can break apart, what does it take to qualify to get these commodities at a third And if you don't qualify, then it's full market. And I think that that even brings more incentive, right? It's like building in, what are the qualifications to actually apply and get it into a third? Otherwise, it's full market value. I mean, the hospital to me would be one that, hey, that's public, that's a public service, it's a safety issue, you know, those type of things definitely would qualify. And maybe we build in other, and I don't know that we're ready to do that tonight, but maybe it's just something that we look into about, okay, actually have qualifications. Otherwise, it's full market, you know?
I would also like to ask staff to clarify on page 8, section D, subsection double little I. I wanted to clarify because my read of that, would a multifamily, let's say a fourplex, that was built in a otherwise residential area, just being a fourplex, an all rental fourplex, would that qualify for free development rights? Because my read of it says that it would only count if it was also located within a town center. So this goes to your point about this is the minutia aspect of what things.
Yes, I think I got it. So as you may recall, the last time that the resolution was adopted, the city council said reserved up to 70 bank tourist accommodations are set aside and may be only used for converting residential use and sold at no cost for the construction of new accessory dwelling units or the construction of new multifamily rental units, 2 or more.
Okay,
So the town center, you can build a 4-unit in any location that multifamily is permitted under the current resolution.
And that, so, all right, so I was looking at II, not IV. So under 4, under D sub 4, that would be the part that qualifies there. So
Correct.
if you
And
build
yeah.
so that's the example that if we are able to bring in some of SB 9 into our residential areas, then they could qualify just for being rental units.
Correct.
In new zones that aren't necessarily town centers.
That is correct, and we have examples of that. The one that comes to mind is 1722 F Street. That's a 12-unit project, includes 10 multifamily and 2 ADUs, and the 10 multifamilies were the result of converting TAUs to residential units of use,
All right,
and
excellent.
provided for free.
But if you're building in a town, but TRPA, as I was told, does not want in town centers market rate units somehow because that's bad. I was told by staff, and I understand there's some dialogue going on with management. That is poor planning. It's micromanaging by a regional agency elected by no one, and some of us have had some conversations that we need to have a diversity of economic growth, not just a one-dimensional economic growth for the sake of our economy. We want market rate investment along with other types of investment, not a single low-income investment. Yet the region is telling us, and I know what I would tell a region if it was off the record, but the region is telling us we can't put market rate units in town centers. So we're not doing the planning or the policy making, they are.
Do you want me?
Yes,
I can-
please,
I
Mr.
can-
Hitchcock, can you
Yes.
clarify that?
Thank you, Mr. Hitchcock.
So as I mentioned in my email to Mr. Jenkins, TRPA doesn't necessarily not want market rate units in our town centers. They just are separating market rate units from deed restricted units and providing more incentives to deed restricted units, for example, higher density and higher height. It's staff's opinion, and we've said this multiple times at the TRPA Advisory Planning Commission, we've said it at the TRPA Governing Board, we've done it at the Regional Planning Commission, that from the city's perspective, our objective is housing for all and housing of all income levels, and that housing should be treated equally in terms of density, incentives, heights, regardless of whether it's deed restricted or whether it's market rate units. I think we're getting some traction there. And I think in this next round of the Midtown Area Plan, I think TRPA is open to making some changes so that we treat those type of development similar in nature when it comes to incentives.
So, Mr. Hitchcock, can you clarify, that means that they may not like it, but it's not restricted? Market rate housing and in mixed-use developments in
Rate housing at high density is not allowed.
Yeah, it's so they cap it at.
So what I said in the
25.
past is true.
Yeah.
There's a cap.
There's a
We
cap.
want more.
We want more. So for example, let's talk about the tourist square plan that was amended in December. Staff pushed to treat all multifamily in a town center at 65 units an acre. That matches up with TRPA's deed restricted units. We got pushback from TRPA and ended up having to adopt a density standard for market rate units at 25 units an acre. That's the concern we have, and we have expressed that to TRPA staff. I think there's a willingness among TRPA staff now to treat those deed restricted market rate units the same, and understanding that from the city's perspective, we want mixed incomes of all income levels in our town centers.
If I may, Mr. Hitchcock, first of all, I want to say again to you, you're always very responsive, and before I was elected, when I'm elected, since I've been elected. But I too sensed, in talking with Ms. Reagan, when I was first elected, and Mr. Hester, that they want to turn, that they want to turn their mic on, that they want to turn the battleship around a little bit as it relates to giving us flexibility to manage our city and diversify our economy, and I'm hoping that we give all the authority to our representative on the board to encourage that and do whatever needs to be done to have us do that, because that's the way real places, real cities grow. That's the way real economies are created. That's the way real prosperity is created for all, is by having that mixed use and investment.
So David,
If I may, really quick, Madam Mayor, yeah, just to reiterate, the moment that the TCAP and the TVAP was approved without that higher density for non-deed restricted units, me and team were on the phone with TRPA, let them know this is a big concern for us. We need to change that. And that process is underway now. I will make sure council's updated as it's progressing. I'll work with our TRPA governing board rep, and we will continue to drive that direction, because I agree, that is what we need.
And they look at it as the deed restrictive being the incentive to get the higher density, and that's what their whole point is on the incentive. But I think the city can get a carve out, away from the rest of the region. So definitely working towards it, and we'll keep at that. So with that, I think I'll go ahead and, well.
You made an important point.
Well, Mr. Robbins. Go.
He has his hand up.
David, you talked about wanting to increase to market costs for the city development rights, right, to bring those up to market costs. I presume with the exception of the exemptions in section 3 subsection D, right, which are the pro-community ones,
it's all about definition of terms. Growing the economy is a pro-community thing, creating jobs so that we're not seeing chain link fences all up and down Highway 50. That's good for the community. Giving people paying so they can afford rents, that's what economic growth is. But yeah, I mean, but I think that's a decision that council makes on an annual basis based upon whatever, and during the budgetary process, that's where those discussions are generally more helpful, because maybe they need more help in the affordable. But the thing about the affordable is, again, the region is not doing its share. They expect us to do everything, and we're gearing our policies almost to do everything. But you know what? They have a job to do, and they need to do it too. And TRPA needs to help us get them to be responsible and take their fair share. Whether Incline wants it, or Douglas wants it, or El Dorado County wants it, or Washoe, or whatever, they need to do their part and not just expect us to do it.
That's it.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Sorry. To that last point, I have put in a request to TRPA since the last meeting for an inventory of what each jurisdiction's done. I'll send that to the council as soon as I get it. Second of all, I've been here over 5 years now, and when I first got here, our housing fund had residual monies left over from RDA days, and we started using that to build the programs. In the last 5 years, our housing division has gone from here to here with regards to staffing and programs. And so the reality is, to your question about how's that impact our budget, if we don't grow new housing dedicated funding, we are going to dip into the general fund, and that will have an impact to support that housing division. That's the truth, in my professional opinion.
If you grow the economics of the city and we have more money, we will have money to allocate for what we find to be a need in the housing for affordable housing. So I agree with you, Mr. City Manager.
So would you, because you mentioned, the fact that we're giving this deep discount for a public commodity, and that's sort of not necessarily the right thing we should be doing. Would you be in favor of increasing the 1/3 discount for everyone to just to the 3/3 market rate? Well, I'm asking Mr. Jenkins.
In principle, that's where you start.
Yeah.
But I think then you have to look at what the value is of the project to the goal that you have as the county, and make a decision. And we used to do that all the time with RDA. You would make those kind of decisions based upon the facts as it relates. And it wasn't y'all get it. It's what are you bringing to the table? How does it benefit us, the community? And you make those decisions on a one-to-one basis. I just think the notion of giving away assets, public assets, is very different than my experience over many years.
I could get on board with it, but I would want to do a lot more work on what it does take to qualify to get to the third, because I think you want to break it up into, I think you want to create qualifying benchmarks, and I don't think we can do that.
Because right now we have.
But there's a
Right
way
now we have
to.
1/3 and free. So you
1/3
want to
and
do
free.
3/3, 1/3 and free, or something like that, or
Something
3/3
like
and
that.
free.
But I'd want to define those qualifiers,
I agree.
and
That's
go through a
fine.
qualifying thing. So with that, I'm going to put forward a
Roberts,
motion.
I'm sorry,
Oh,
Mr. Roberts'
Mr. Roberts,
hands is up.
excuse me, go.
I'm sorry, I got a silly question here. Since the goal of having these developmental properties is to encourage development and to assist, the growth, and we're discussing all these opportunities, maybe it's the wrong term, but to barter for the price. I'm just curious, is having the prices set, does that inhibit our opportunity to barter and generate more opportunities, or keeping it dark, if you will help generate more opportunity? I'm just curious.
From my perspective, from a negotiating standpoint, you'd be better off to come in where come in dark in a sense, right? Not maybe the dark is the wrong word, but you want to be able to negotiate and set the bar where you're at. But I think, I don't know that we can even do that. I think we have to list something, I don't
think
know.
that
We don't have to list anything. It just doesn't give any, it means that everybody has to come to the podium and ask the council through the Development Services Department so that they can get a price from city council. And then we have a discussion similar to this. And I've been in the room when those discussions happen, and it was pretty awful.
And it creates, again, another element of uncertainty and risk out of nowhere.
And it picks winners and losers.
But that's why I think later, if we worked on these qualifiers that brought you to the third, then you're incentivizing more that you want and not just giving it away. And if it is somebody that's just trying to build an amazing luxury home, well, then they can pay full price, because that's what they would pay anyways, So I think
That's what I
setting
would
that,
like to see.
setting that as we go, but
So then-
I don't know that we can do that tonight. I think we should ask staff
I
to bring
agree.
it back.
So then in the motion, I just want to make sure that there should be two, if it needs to be in the motion, I guess it's a question for Joe if it needs to be in the motion. Because there's now, in addition to approving the valuation, which is the actual thing we're approving here, which is the market valuation, one would be to bring back a discussion on the price structure for altering it to what we discussed, but to creating a full price, a partial price, and a free tier, right? And I think that's a discussion we should have. And you're right. I guess we could have it now, but let's have it not now.
Yeah.
And the other one was a letter for, a council city formal request to the TRPA to make this a transparent market.
market.
An open market. And so that would be two.
Do you
would
want that
be-
direction on a motion, Joe, or is that okay as direction?
Or is it just council direction?
I guess that's my,
For the
yeah, that's my
letter.
question. I think.
Yeah, no, it'd be good to have it in the motion, please.
Okay.
That's
So you
why I
got that,
wanted to
Cody?
spell that out before we actually made it. If you want, I can make
You
the
can make
motion.
a
I
motion.
move
Go right
on
ahead.
Councilmember Robbins' motion to send a letter to TRPA encouraging a transparent commodities market.
Yeah, I would just change that to requesting, but yeah, or if not
Requesting.
violently demanding. Second on that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the letter.
Okay, hold on.
Thank you.
Joe, is what we're talking about in that letter, is that clear enough for you?
Yes.
To understand what we're talking, because the motion's top level, but I want to make sure you have a good understanding of it.
I understand it.
All right, very good.
Please tell me when you're ready, Ms. Blankenship.
I thought she was telling me to go to the motion.
This says adopting the development rights appraisal.
It's just, that's the
Okay.
suggested action.
Because you're ad-libbing a motion, so.
Okay.
This is what we're doing.
Okay, no worries. You've got the meaning of the ad lib, though.
Okay. That
Okay,
motion
now we
unanimously
have
carries.
The actual item.
Great.
No,
I will
we've got
put
the
forward a
request-
motion to pass a resolution accepting the development rights appraisal prepared by Johnson Valuation Group Limited and establishing a price point for the calendar year 2025 at 1/3 of the recommended fair market value outlined in the appraisal.
And asking it to come back for further discussion.
Oh, I
that
thought
was
that
a
was
part-
part of the, and asking it to
no,
come back for further discussion. Okay, excuse me, I thought it
Okay.
was,
Discussion on the price structure.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bass. We have a motion. Is there a second?
And if I may, clarity, really quick, that price discussion is going to include options with benchmarks for partial, full, or discounted rate.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and
And in the past, we've done it for housing items. I do think this is going to fold into our BRE and economic development incentive options. So that's how I'm going to look at it with my team.
thank you, Mr. Irvin. I was just going to say
agree.
that. Please work with Ms. Roverud because she's sort of
Second.
heading up that BRE. Yeah, thank you. So we have a motion and a second by Mr. Jenkins. Everybody, please vote.
Thank you all. Or as they say, y'all.
That motion unanimously carries.
Thank you.
That was easy.
We have one last item.
9 million technical, complicated
Yeah.
economic questions.
So,
about
item number
dark
13,
pavement.
contract award with All American Construction, South Tahoe Public Utility District funding, acceptance in lieu fee reimbursements, and the 2025 road rehabilitation and drainage replacement project, and amendment number 1 to the agreement with Lumos.
Good evening, Mrs. Mayor and the City Council. My name is Stephen Anderjack, and I'm a staff member in the City of South Lake Tahoe's Public Works Department. I'm here today to update you on the progress of our 2025 road rehabilitation and drainage replacement project, as well as recommend the award of the contract to All American Construction, Inc. Is there something else I should be clicking?
Are you going to sing?
What?
I was
Sue's got it for
Next
you.
time.
I'm just kidding.
The City of South Lake Tahoe's paving plan selects the roads to be paved based on 3 main factors. The first factor we look at in our evaluation is the pavement condition indexes, or PCIs for short. This is a condition rating from 0 to 100 of each road segment in our network, with 0 being the worst and 100 being the best. We then look for groupings of roads that have low PCIs in order to generate better pricing using economies of scale when contracting this paving work. We then confirm that there are no planned utility or other construction at these locations in order to adhere to our dig once policy by ensuring that our newly paved roads are not excavated. The roads shown on the map were selected to be a part of this year's project are as follows: Herbert Road, Woodland Road, Walkup Road, Hobart Road, Aloha Road, Red Lake Road, and War Road. These roads include the project's base bid as well as bid alts 1, 2, 6, and 7. In addition to the paving of these roads, minor storm drainage repairs will occur on the roadways to be paved in order to avoid trenching newly paved roads. The Aloha Basin portion of the Upper Bijou Park Creek project is also included in this project as bid alt 7, as this project involves trenching Herbert Avenue, and this needs to be completed before the road is paved. All drainage work will be paid from the drainage maintenance account. The paving aspects of this project will be paid with Measure S funds and with utility in lieu fee reimbursements. There are currently 2 reimbursement agreements with South Tahoe Public Utility District to aid in the funding of this project. This budgeting will pay for the construction contract, a 10% construction contingency, materials testing, inspection, and labor compliance. The Public Works Department advertised this project to bid on our Planet Bids portal on March 31st, and bids were due on April 22nd. We received 4 bids, with All American Construction, Inc. as the apparent low bidder, with a total base bid of $2,400,696.25. With the inclusion of bid alts 1, 2, 6, and 7, the total contract value is $4,033,731. After review of the bid documents, including local hire good faith efforts, it is the recommendation of the Public Works Department to award the 2025 road rehabilitation and drainage replacement contract to All American Construction for a total contract value of $4,033,731, with a 10% construction contingency of $403,373.10. In addition to this award, the Public Works Department recommends the execution of the 2 STPUD reimbursement agreements and the approval of the Loomis Amendment Number 1 to their design PSA for construction support services for an additional not-to-exceed value of $7,840. This concludes our recommendations, and I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Anderjack. Council, do you have any questions?
Qu-
Mr. Jenkins?
Quick question. First of all, you gave a good report. I support the project.
Thank you.
Is it a reasonable expectation when a utility cuts into a street, as happens, that, and of course you want the utility, let me finish, my wife tells me to finish the sentence. Is it reasonable to expect that the money that's paid to the city for paving, for repaving, will at some point come back and will actually repave that street where the utility has torn it up? Is that a reasonable expectation by people who may want their streets, who utilities have made cuts and they would like to see the paving repaired properly?
Yeah, so actually, this project in particular is following in an STPUD project. They had their Herbert Walkup water and sewer line replacement project in this exact area, and their in lieu fees is paying for a portion of this project. Not all utility, we don't pave every single road utility cuts because we incorporate it into the larger project and group that based on what areas we deem need to be paved. But all of the utility reimbursements go towards the paving project of that year.
Thank you, Mr. Anderjack. Mr. Najad, can you, for Mr. Jenkins and maybe even for Mr. Roberts, talk about the in lieu fee and why we changed that policy?
Well, a few years back, we, in our PIEs, which are our engineering standards, we had required the utility companies to pave the roadways when they trenched. That really didn't work out because they would not modify all of the base material. The requirement was to basically go back and put in some amount of overlay, which was pretty much a waste of money because we had to come back in a few years and replace everything. So we negotiated with the utility companies to come up with this in lieu fee. We calculate the areas of impact they will pay us, and then we put that money into our pavement reconstruction work. As Steve mentioned, this project follows exactly what STPUD did last year. So they trenched all of these roadways, and now we're taking that money and we're repaving these roadways.
It also has to do with our dig once policy as well.
Yeah. Correct.
I understand.
Perfect, thank you.
I dig it.
Any other questions from Mr. Anderjack? Okay, seeing none, thank you. We'll move to public comment. Mr. Loberg?
Thank you. I want to know why my streets was in the neighborhood were on the list in 2019 for a 5-year plan, 2020 to 2025, and nothing was done. Nothing was done, except they were, thrown away for some other project? It's ridiculous. You know, I've got cuts in the street, probably 20 years old, that have not been fixed on Brockway, on Essex, and other in the neighborhood. One that's probably, I don't know, 300 yards long, down the middle of the street. That means they've got to be paid, the city's paid by the utility to pave it from both sides. A cut that's only halfway out is just one side, but this one's down the middle, so both sides of that street should have been repaved. Why are these streets getting pushed back? What happened to this 5-year plan? Why are you wasting city staff time, public time, to get this plan done, and then it's just disregarded for what? Just some other conservancy wants drainage done, and so then this project gets tossed? What's the explanation? Why is this project ahead of this project that was supposed to be done? My street was supposed to be completed in 2024. Why has it not been done? And why is it even not on the list? He talks about ratings. I misspoke when I said mine was 23. Mine was rated at 24. How many of these streets are rated above 24 that you're replacing and repaving? How many of these are you doing that are rated above 24? You don't know. That's just ridiculous. There was one other street that was, I think of 21 rated on that sheet that was supposed to be done in 24. Mine was the second worst. There are other streets that are not as bad, but they're on that list too, but they weren't done. So what is this, just a merry-go-round? We just plan to do stuff and have staff spin their wheels and then just throw that away because somebody new comes, or what's the explanation for that? There was a long list, and this was after the community plan, 15-year-old plan, and part of those things were more bike paths, lighted neighborhood along the bike path, and it also included more police presence, community area. None of that stuff was done. So we're just wasting people's time. Why is this other stuff pushed ahead? What happened to this? Why did it get thrown away and in the can not to be done? It's just obscene. It's a misuse of the public trust.
Thank you, Mr. Lober. Is there any other member of the public that would like to make comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll move to Zoom.
There are no hands raised at this time, Mayor.
Thank you. I'll bring it back to council for further discussion or a motion. Mr. Robbins?
I just have a very minor process note. In the staff report material and in the contract material, we did not have the map of the project area, at least not that I saw. I mean, I flipped through all the pages here and looking for it. I just want to request from staff that for future road rehab and road projects generally going forward, in the staff report itself, not just in the contract, but in the, here it's not in the contract either, but in the staff report particularly, it'd be really good to include the area maps and the particular streets as a map in the staff report, both for council and for public understanding, rather than just having it. A lot of times it's like buried in the back as an attachment to the contract, but here it's not. So it would be good to have, so there's no map anywhere on this. I would like to make sure that all future instantiations of road and maintenance projects include an area map.
Thank you, Mr. Robbins.
Is that something staff can make sure they do? Guaranteed. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Najat, I was actually just going to ask you to talk about how things change and how they're prioritized.
First of all, we made a presentation, I believe in February. We showed all of the roadways that have the low PCIs. We made some recommendations in terms of which roadways should be paved this year. Very recently, we have gone to the neighborhood for the gentleman who spoke, and we made some repair work. We have a lot of needs in the city. And next council meeting, I will be presenting our next year road rehab as well as road maintenance. And, we take the comments. If the council desires to select any roadways with low PCI, we will include that in the next year program. So I'm not aware of the 2019 5-year plan. And so we come here twice every year We first present the roadways that are selected. We get input from the public, from the council, and then we go and design those roadways. So that's the process. And we do have a lot of roadways in the city, and which requires maintenance. And we're doing the best that we can to schedule those with the funding that we have available.
Thank you, Mr. Najad. Mr. Roberts?
Just a silly point. In the suggested actions on number 3, it says an amendment to number 1, not to exceed $7,840. In the council agenda report, page 3, it's $7,480. I don't know if we wanted to, it's important to fix that or not.
Mr. Anderjack, can you address item number 3 under suggested actions? And tell if it's 7,480 or 7,840?
It's 7,840.
Thank you.
I know.
Okay, any other discussion, council?
Then in the motion, should we include that corrections?
It's on the suggestion.
The motion is correct.
Yeah,
The motion,
it's
yeah.
on,
So with that, then I'll put forward a motion to pass a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor to execute a contract with All American Construction, Inc. for a total of $4,033,731 plus a 10% contingency of $403,373.10 for the 2025 road rehabilitation and drainage replacement project. Number 2, authorizing and directing the mayor to execute South Tahoe Public Utility District reimbursement agreements for the Herbert Walkup and lieu fee reimbursement and the 2025 road rehab utility adjustments reimbursement. And 3, authorizing and directing the mayor to execute amendment number 1 to agreement with Loomis and Associates for a not to exceed value of $7,840 for construction support services.
okay, we have a motion and a second.
Was that Mr. Jenkins? Okay.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll vote.
That motion unanimously carries.
Thank you. Item number 14, agenda and planning calendar. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Madam Mayor. Next meeting is June 3rd, 9 a.m. Really, it's quite a few things on the agenda right now, but just to highlight the first reading for VHR regulations outside the tourist core will be on there. ADU parcel analysis will be brought. That's been something the council's been wanting for some time. And then draft 2025-2026 CIP, Capital Improvement Program.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Irvin on the agenda planning
Is there
calendar?
expected to be a closed session for that?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, very good, thank you. Understanding that that can always change, but at the moment.
Do you have a question about the APC, Mr.
Yeah,
Jenkins?
I think the discussion on the VHR is going to be long, so I just, as we think about the other items too, I think it's going to be a detailed conversation and lengthy.
We also have the
If
quarterly.
there's something I can push off, I will use my discretion there, and
We
I
also have-
appreciate it.
We also have the quarterly housing report on that same agenda, right? Am I reading that right? It's 9 a.m., which is another pretty significant topic. So,
Everybody be prepared to have a great lunch that Ms. Blankenship will provide for
She
us.
told me to bring a sandwich.
Well, you get what you give. Okay, updates and announcement. Ms. Stroud, do you have any updates or announcements?
No, Madam Mayor, not at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Blankenship?
Just two things. One, there has been a request for the mayor to present a proclamation recognizing June 20th as Torch Run Day. This will be outside of a council meeting that she'll be presenting that. Okay, thank you.
I didn't catch that.
Torch Run Day.
Torch Run
It's,
Day.
It's law enforcement. Torch Run.
Law
I thought this was
enforcement
like-
torch run for Special Olympics in Northern California.
I'm usually told not to
I
run
will
with
not be
scissors, but it's
running.
okay to run with torches? How does this work?
And then the other one is a request to recognize July as Disability Pride Month, but we would be presenting it at the last meeting in June because we're dark in July.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Irvin, do you have any updates or announcements?
I do. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tomorrow, May 21st, from 1:30 to 3:30 at Public Works Department on D Street, there'll be an open house, outside, inside. Stop by and come learn more about Public Works. Airport Art Exhibition is opening here on Thursday, May 22nd. That starts at 4 p.m. It's from 4 to 6, and it's right here in the airport. The 29th of May is a meetup with the mayor, next month's event, and that's going to be an overview of some strategic plan items at 4:30.
At L Works.
No cooking at that one. And then on June 1st, Lake Tahoe Pride is organizing a community activity at Lakeview Commons at 1 o'clock, and then walking towards the crosswalks that are designated Pride crosswalks at 3 p.m. on Sunday, June 1st. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Mr. Irvin. Council member reports, Mr. Roberts?
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Robbins?
Yeah, quick question on the unscheduled pending item for ethics policy revisions. I understand that's sort of slated for the fall. Now, am I remembering that right from like 10 seconds ago?
It's on unscheduled pending, but I think by fall, we should have time to bring that forward.
Is the intent with that item to have like a new ethics policy sort of drafted for that item?
No, that'll be an item to talk with council about how you want to go about the process and any ideas
Okay.
on what you want to include.
Okay, because we were considering suggesting an ad hoc committee for that, but if you're not, I guess the question is, if you're not actually even ready for an ad hoc committee until late summer, early fall, then there's no point in making an item to just do that as an ad hoc committee.
It's going to take a lot of staff time to work. If council does want to do an ad hoc committee, which hasn't been discussed yet,
Yeah.
it's still going to take staff time to work with that committee.
Okay.
Madam
So
Mayor.
you're not going to have time to even work with the committee until fall, even if we had one?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not, that's just what I wanted to clarify, whether or not you were bringing back a revision at that meeting or just bringing back an initial discussion. Okay.
Well, if I may, Madam Mayor,
Yeah, it's your turn.
to Councilmember Robbins, I think there's the policy is old. It's 1992, I believe. And for the time, it was probably a good policy. I suspect that the League of California Cities, Cal Cities, and a lot of cities have adopted ethics policies, I would assume. Maybe some of the larger ones haven't, as we read in the newspaper. I think there might be some advantage for us, some of us, to, I mean, I guess we can do it on our own, or we can do it through a committee, of finding out what other people have done. I think there's what's legal and what's ethical and what's moral. Not that anything we have in policy is not, but I think there's a whole host of issues that relate simply because I look at what this state does of California, and they say is legal, and it leaves a lot of room for a lot of things. So I'm just wondering, maybe we can, even if just on our own, we can start getting information that about an ethics policy.
Yeah, that was my idea. I just wasn't clear in prior discussions if the item that they're thinking for late summer, early fall was to have a policy, an initial revision of that policy ready.
It's a
Or
policy
it's really,
discussion.
that's what I understand. I'm saying is that's what I wasn't understanding, and so I wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
So I certainly think a subcommittee would be the right way to go, but
I'm sorry, we're
Yeah,
kind of
this
getting
is-
into the discussion
yeah.
that we're going to have when this
I
item
understand.
comes back, and so far, all we had was a request for it to come back in a second, so we don't know what it's going to look like yet, but we'll talk about that when we have it on the agenda.
it's sounding from what they're saying like they're not even ready for that yet. So putting this on an agenda earlier may not make a ton of sense. Then my only other item was, we had the and I've lost track of where it is here, but we should have somewhere on the APC, the scooter mobility item that we pushed off from a few weeks ago, and that's.
Coming June 3rd.
Coming June 3rd, yeah. So one of the things that came up when we had the initial conversation with them, the initial conversation about that was to request that the mobility providers be provided with a time to give a presentation about their capabilities. And that was not part of the agenda item the last time this was on the agenda, which then got pushed off till later. So I just want us to request that we provide modification / clarity on that agenda item, that we provide for that agenda item the opportunity for the mobility vendors to present. It doesn't have to be long and involved, but just provide them an opportunity to say, these are the options we offer for additional security measures, safety measures, and whatnot, but
Do you have
provide that with
something,
their
Mr.
time.
Irvin?
Yeah, I received an email from them today. They asked for time to have a presentation. I told them they would not have a presentation, but they could speak during the item at public comment. And if there was need for clarifying questions, the mayor may, at her will, ask them to clarify.
Yeah, but that doesn't provide them with the ability to show examples of their stuff, so.
They are welcome to put something in writing. So unless somebody wants to support that.
Yeah, is there a second for giving them an opportunity to actually speak and present at that meeting?
In our protocols, I'm not really sure this is appropriate for a second, because that item is already on the agenda, and it's already drafted. I mean, it's already done, so.
What's the process for amending an item that's already on the agenda then, to support?
For this
you got
section
a-
of the
if you got
city
a
council
second.
agenda, when we get a second, it says that we'll come back with a very high-level staff report to gain more policy direction from council on so they can tell us what further they want us to analyze, and that will not come back any sooner than 2 meetings. That's the council-adopted protocols. But that allows us to manage and meter out our staff workloads with all of the things that we're working on. But this one is an anomaly. It's already in Granicus. We've already read it and approved. I mean, Sue's going to be publishing the agenda a week from today. So,
Yeah, my understanding with the original item was that was supposed to include the opportunity for them to present and have
That's not my
interactive dialogue.
understanding.
So what I'm asking for is, I guess, a clarification that is what that agenda item is supposed to contain.
I'm sorry I butted in on this, but I do want to just say, I think what I told them today would give them the opportunity to speak for 3 minutes on what technology they've improved. If through council discussion on that item, there's need for them to come and have a clarifying statement that may be given.
Perfect. So I'm aware of it now, Mr. Robbins, and so when that item comes up, we will be as informal as we need to be with them. But to have a full-on presentation, they're welcome to bring something in writing. So just like any other public comment.
Could they present something in writing to staff that you could include in the agenda, with the agenda item, just as information to the council, so that we don't hear it first? We don't hear it first. We have a chance over the weekend to read it. Would that be, I think
And the public.
we're dealing with nitty things here. So
If they have something that's straightforward that they can give to future Chief Robertson, that he can review with our city attorney, and it's appropriate to include, we'll add it.
Well, we had public commenters today have slide decks with public comment.
So, yeah, if they want to
Yeah.
make a.
Within 4
public
minutes.
comment,
Yeah.
they can do that. And so again, we're getting into an item that's not on the
Yes.
agenda and having a full discussion, so I would
Yes.
suggest we stop doing that.
Thank you, Ms. Stroud. Okay, I'm sorry. It's late. Mr. Roberts, did you have something to add to your report?
Just my back and forth with them on a couple of emails. It just feels like they want us to approve what they're going to do, when the reality is they know what they need to do, and I just look for results. I told them, you have an opportunity, you know what you need to do. We're going to judge you on your results, not, because once we approve what we want them to do, we take a certain amount of responsibility for their results, and I think we should turn that back on them.
Okay, perfect. So, Mr. Jenkins, do you have any council member reports?
I have a request. I have a report. Happy to be here. But I have a request relating to fractionalized ownership of margaritas. I think we're hearing from a major property. I think it would be good at some point in the near term that we look at how we may be able to assist from a business retention, business expansion, and I would hope that there might be a second to bring that matter back as soon as that is practical from the staff standpoint. I think there might be some differences of whether we should even have it, but we don't need another hole in the ground there, is I guess the point that.
I can support that as a second, but I want to see it also with a fiscal analysis around our current TOT collection compared to with no TOT collection. Yeah.
I got it.
Okay.
There is a way to do it. We'll add it today if you see it, get it back.
Mr. Bass, do you have any council member reports?
I'm good to go.
Thank you. I'm good to go too. The only thing I will say is, this was Chief Stevenson's last city council meeting, and I'm sorry that I'm glad that he left early, but I'm also sorry that he left early, because, I think he's been an amazing chief, and I want to welcome future Chief Robertson, and you'll be sitting up here with us next time. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comments about Chief Stevenson.
And then for Chief Drennan, I believe there's a wildfire safety expo on Saturday at South Tahoe Middle School from 10 to 2.
That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, that's all I have. Thank you. We're adjourned.